counting boxes here, making sure we have a quorum.
We do.
We do, great. Okay, it is 4:01 on Thursday, February 20th, and I will call to order the meeting of the County Finance Review Committee. And I will, by roll call, call attendance in the order in which I see you. Denise?
Aye.
Joe?
You said Joe?
Joe Wright.
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye. Here.
Rob?
Here.
Jeremy?
Here?
There's a lot of people.
And Joanna's there too, Stephen.
Joanna. Okay.
Aye.
Joanna.
Here.
Is there any mechanism for like grouping people so that I don't lose them?
Unfortunately, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that.
If you hit participants, it'll show you everybody down the right.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'll ask for an approval of the agenda, and this is just for the County Finance Review Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded, and roll call, starting with Rob.
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Jeremy? And Joanna?
Aye.
You? Okay, and we'll roll right into a review and discussion of the FY26 county budget.
Okay,
Leading that.
thank you. I think Stephen's going to share the presentation. Yep, thank you, Stephen. So we gave this to the county commissioners last night, so we'll take you through this. Next slide, please, Stephen. So the county is made up of the county administration and registry of deeds being the administration and deeds excise within the county. Next slide, please, Stephen. The revenue sources are the town assessment, deeds excise revenue, recording fees, corrections deeds excise, which is $250,000, which is applied towards the debt service for the public safety facility. Any registry of deeds excise fund balance, which can only be used in specific instances related to the registry of deeds itself, and then county fund balance, which can be used for the operation of the administration of the county in and of itself. Next slide, please, Stephen. We're projecting, and in the article for the annual town meeting warrant, town assessment is $240,605. Deeds excise receipts, $584,375, broken out between the registry of deeds, $233,750, and county administration, $350,625. Recording fees of $141,375. Correction deeds excise, which is the receipts to be applied against the debt service for the public safety facility. And then we are proposing and projecting using $130,408 in fund balance from the county. Projected revenue this year, $1,346,763 from those sources. Next slide, please. County funding requirement, we are required by law to provide a certain amount of non-deeds excise tax. That is taken by taking the amount of the recording fees of 141 plus the 240 gets the amount that is required to minimum requirement to operate in the county. That's the it increases by 2.5% per year. The amount required from the town assessment for fiscal 26 is the $240,605. Next slide, please. Projected expenses. Now, I know in years past, everybody is probably aware and remembers typically we've never had employees in county administration. We are proposing to fund 2 employees through county administration this year. One would be what's known as a real estate specialist 2. As many people are probably aware, we have a lot of real estate issues that are interplay between the town and the county, and Tracy McDonald, our real estate specialist on the town, has been doing a tremendous job, but there's still a lot of work to be done to clean up a lot of those issues and a lot of work relative to real estate in and of itself. So we're proposing the position of real estate specialist 2, as well as funding a portion of the events coordinator position, which is in culture and tourism budget as well. And then normal operating expenses within the county, including additional legal fees and normal professional consulting services, mostly related to surveying and land consultants. Within the Registry of Deeds, there are 3 full-time employees, some administrative expenses, including rents, professional services, and then any special projects or other expenses related to the operation in deeds excise, $622,257. As I mentioned, the Public Safety Facility Debt Service, that is the grant from the state and the Commonwealth, $250,000. We do apply that against the debt service that is in the general fund budget, which was a debt exclusion to build the public safety facility, thereby reducing the amount that's raised every year in the general fund budget for that debt service payment. Total projected expenses, $1,346,763. The main difference, as I pointed out, on a year-over-year basis, other than just some normal increases within the Registry of Deeds related to payroll and insurance increases, is the addition and the recommendation of the real estate specialist 2 in the county and the splitting of the events coordinator and funding a portion of that through the county budget. To entertain any questions if the review board has any. And I would note prior to that, that this was presented to the county commissioners last night, and they did recommend approval and adoption of the proposed budget.
Thank you, Brian. And we'll go to board members, committee members first for questions. Jeremy, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian, I was just curious what other metrics you could provide just on the real estate, that necessitates, $500,000, almost $500,000 and 2 employees. What are some of the things they do, or how many projects do they work on? I'd be curious to that.
Well, there's a lot of, I don't know the entire depth or breadth of what they're going to do, but there's a lot of roads that are owned by the county, and there's work relative to those, and potentially, actually Libby has her hand up, so I actually will let her answer that question rather than me stumble through it.
I don't know if we have specific metrics about things, but I can tell you that on the real estate side, and I believe these numbers include health insurance, Brian.
They do, yes.
So that adds what, $35,000 each?
Yes.
So that's part of it. And there may be some other administrative costs in there that aren't directly related to salary. Well, actually, part of the 548 is operating expenses. In any event, Brian can probably give you a breakdown of the payroll. And I'm just looking at the differences here on the budget on the screen. So the real estate specialist is going to help with things like easements, takings, document recording, encroachments, negotiations for property acquisition, and that includes things like easements, licenses, leases, helping to process and negotiate leases and licenses. There are a lot of transactions that the town and county undertake on a very regular basis. The yard sale program needs to be managed. We could give you the job description if you want, and give you some idea of what the current projects are. The real estate specialist 1, Tracy McDonald, has a probably 4-page spreadsheet of all of the real estate activities that are underway currently.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, the events coordinator is a newish position. It was in the police department. It's now moved over to culture and tourism. And that is mostly the coordination of town events and assistance with people organizing larger events that are more or less established and or helping them through if they are going to become a new event with location issues, like, helping them with a little bit with the not the licensing so much, but the specifics around the event itself. But there's a lot to the town events, like 4th of July fireworks, 4th of July events during the day. The Daffodil Parade is not a town event, but there is an impact on the town that this person will help with. Same with Stroll. Trying to think of other events that happen throughout the year. That sort of thing. And they're also going to be starting to assist with passport processing.
I mean, so one thing to note, Jeremy, is that the 474 is not solely salary. It's also about a little over 200,000 combined of legal services that may or may not be needed and additional engineering and surveying costs that we would have to undertake regardless, in conjunction with these real estate, the real estate position as well, is a great majority of the additional cost in there. So it's not solely just, it's not $500,000 for employees. It's employees and other services that we've always had through the county as well. We just recommended positions to assist with the myriad of matters that are there for that need addressing.
Great, that's super, thanks.
Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the county budget.
So
Make a
moved.
motion. Okay, go ahead. I'll second it.
Thank you.
Right, Jill, that was a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
Yes.
Peter, that's a second.
Yes.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I will go roll call in the order in which I see you. Joe Wright,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Jill, that was an aye.
How about I?
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye,
and the chair votes aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Do we have any other business before the County Finance Review Board?
No, that's all.
Okay, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So
So
moved.
Second.
Go anywhere. We're about to open the Finance Committee meeting, but roll call to adjourn this meeting. Please, Joe, Wright,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Jeremy,
aye.
and Joanna.
Aye.
Chair is aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. See you next year. And now it is 4:14 on Thursday, February 20th. And I will call to order this meeting of the Nantucket Town Finance Committee. And we need to roll call again for attendance, please, starting with Joe Wright,
Aye. Here.
Peter,
Here.
Chris,
Yes.
Ace,
Here.
Jill,
Here.
Rob,
Here.
Jeremy,
Here,
great.
No, me.
Said Joanna. Ready? Jeremy, did I get you?
you got me, yes.
All right.
A lot of
Very good.
days.
Thank you. We're all here again. Thanks for sticking around. May I ask for an approval of the agenda?
So approved.
Second.
Made by Jeremy, seconded by Jill. Thank you, Jeremy.
Aye,
Motion. Aye, thank you. Joe,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
right. Chair votes aye, unanimous. Thank you very much. And now I will open the floor for public comment. This is for items which are not otherwise on the agenda. Seeing none, closing public comment, and we'll move along to the next item, which is review and discussion of the fiscal year 2026 school budget. Who will be leading this presentation?
Leave Martin?
Dr.
Or-
Allen.
Yes,
Hello, Stephen.
I am here. Hello, good evening. How would you like me to share? Should I share my screen? Is that the best way for me to present?
Yeah,
As long as I have access, I'm happy to do that.
Stephen, does that work?
Yeah, if you can. If not, I have it up and I can share it. Whatever's easier
I
for
think
you.
you have I think you have a PDF version. I have a PowerPoint version.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can share, and then let's try that. Okay. So hold on one second here. I'm going to try to get. There we go. Is that okay? Everyone can see that?
And Dr. Howell, this is the same as what we've received by email?
Yes, it is. You have received, yes, you have received the same presentation. It's just in a PDF version instead of a PowerPoint version.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for having us tonight. We appreciate being able to share our FY26 budget development and explain a little bit about what we are looking to achieve next year. I'm excited to share with you some of the new things, but also go through some of the things that you've seen at other times. But as we know, change happens every year. And so we look carefully at all of the pieces as we develop our budget. It's really more of a story as we develop our budget. We look carefully at all of the parts that come in, whether it's student enrollment, whether it's teacher retention, and all of the pieces that come together to help us understand, including instructional vision, which we will talk a little bit about in this presentation. So. Okay, so in the first slide you see here, we're looking at an enrollment summary from 2011 to 2026, and obviously 2026 is just a projection. So you'll see that our enrollment has moved up. We have, however, been hovering basically between 1,620 students to 1,730. So we're more or less in Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate it. May I request that you're getting my notes? I would much prefer to just share the presentation. Is that okay? Can I unshare and then reshare the correct presentation? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's hard for me. I have two screens and sometimes it's hard for me to see what's going on here. So one sec here. Okay. How does that look?
Better.
There.
Hopefully that's better. Yes, perfect. Thank you. All right. So, so as I said, we're looking at a variation from 2017, 2018 to 2025, 26 of about 100 students. So we've evened out a little bit over time from 2011. So we're just seeing some variation in smaller numbers. So and going forward in our future, we are seeing smaller class sizes coming up. So that is definitely something to keep in mind as we are moving forward. So I'm going to go to the next slide. All right, hang on. There we go. not moving. It seems to be the problem. There we go. Okay. So this is a historical enrollment by grade from 2003 to 2004 to 2023-24. So this gives us a 20-year snapshot of what our enrollment has looked like over time. So the most interesting part, I think, to notice is our subgroup percentages. In 2003-04, we were predominantly white with regard to ethnicity, with Hispanic and African American coming up with small percentages. But then fast forward 20 years, and we are seeing now that our highest subgroup percentage is actually Hispanic at 43.4% of the whole district, and 41.7 is white, 8.5 is African American, and then 6.5 is considered other, which means other ethnicities, and that's what we're seeing for this past year, 23-24. Our numbers, our total enrollment, you can see listed there as well. And again, same situation. We're fluctuating between 2017, 2018, up to 2023-24, more or less 50 students, more or less. We're seeing that. So. Our next slide is around our English learner population, again, from 2011 to 2026 projected. We have seen growth quite a bit, definitely over time. There was a little bit of a slump during the pandemic. You'll see that little dip. But as we come to the current year and the projected year, we're definitely seeing some growth, but not that much. We certainly saw growth from last year to this year with our totals jumping up about 40, 50 students, but we are not seeing a projected growth for the next year of a higher rate. So we are seeing a little bit of evening out there. For our special education population, there has definitely been growth in this area. So you will notice that our numbers have continued to grow in this area, and it's important that we focus some of our budget on this, and that we are paying attention to the needs of our students in our special education population. We do have to consider that that students do move to different grades and different schools. So the numbers may change from year to year slightly, but the overall total is moving up ever so slightly as we continue forward. So I'm going to turn this over to Martin to share the next few slides, and he can explain our projected increase.
Good evening. So every year we obviously start with FY25, our current budget being 40,178,395, and we are in the projected increase for FY26 when we take everything into consideration, operating and salaries, is $2,967,781, of which $300,000 are going to be funded by free cash. So it will be for one-time expense increases, which this year we plan to use to purchase a new ELA district-wide curriculum. So our projected FY26 budget becomes $43,146,176. And next slide, please. So the next slide is a historic depiction of sorts of our budget and how it has moved throughout the years. You can see, coincidentally, this is the time that I've been with the district. So I've been through all these budget cycles now. When I came over 2015, our budget for 2015-2016 was a little over $25 million, and the projected budget for 25-26 is over $43 million. So you can see that we have grown by over $18 million. And obviously this includes the opening of a new school building, which happened in 2017. So, but that's just a graph of our budget and how it's moved. 24, 25, 26, those increases are mostly driven by contractual obligations. So it's I believe the nature of town budgets as well. You'll see in the subsequent slide the breakdown between salaries and operating. And next slide, please. Next slide is the per pupil expenditure. This is a metric that we use to see how much we're expending per pupil compared to the state and other districts. In Massachusetts, there is a total of 316 school districts. We are number 34 highest in expenditure per pupil. But of note here is 22 of the 33 districts that sit above Nantucket have less than 800 students. So these are either very small districts such as Provincetown, or districts that include maybe one school, or just have much lower student population. So I just wanted to point that out because this shows the numbers a little skewed. In my opinion, we're in top 15, and that now our number is going to grow because the 22-23 year, the latest year that they have available data, state usually is 2 years behind, is the year prior to our new contractual agreements with the teachers went into effect. So my prediction is this number, our number per pupil will jump over the next 3 years, and the gap between us and the state would widen. Right now it sits at a little under $6,100. We expend $6,097 more than the average is in the state of Massachusetts. Next slide, please. Next slide is chapter 70. This is a formula-driven calculation that starts with the foundation budget. The foundation budget is a concept that was developed in the state of Massachusetts to be able to calculate an amount that provides adequate education for each school, for each child that goes into the public school system. So with us, you can see the growth between 2014 and 2015, and the 2025-26 number we just came out last week. It's not a final number. This has to go through several stages of approval, but the projection is $4,744,330. The goal of chapter 70, to come back to this formula-driven number, is to provide 17.5% of the total foundation budget for a district. For us, the calculation was $27,110,454. Obviously, we're getting a substantially higher amount than that. So this just has to do with the area we live in and the costs of living on Nantucket. And the formula itself takes into consideration things like equalized valuation of properties of the properties on Nantucket, as well as revenue growth factor and things like that, wage adjustment factor. I'm not going to bore you with the formula. It has gone through several updates over the past 5-6 years, and we are currently in a 7-year cycle that's supposed to end in 2027, where different factors such as English language learners and special education costs were incorporated to be reflected better in the formula. Again, this is something that is just for presentation purpose. This is funding that comes from the state every year. And next slide, I believe, is Beth.
Yes. So this slide shows our federal grants, our title grants in particular, and our IDEA grant, which amount to about $630,000 of our budget. The largest grant here is the IDEA grant, and that is monies that are allocated towards special education. Our Title I grant, which is the next largest allocation at $83,495, is around socioeconomic situations with students, and it focuses also on reading and literacy. Title II is preparation, training, and recruitment of high-quality teachers and principals, and that's $27,000. Title III is for our English learners, $51,181. And Title IV is professional services. So again, that's professional development, training of teachers, etc. One thing to mention about our federal grants is that Title I encompasses some of the other titles as we build our allocations every year as we share how we're going to use those funds. And Title I is a tricky situation in that it is dependent on the census. And in Nantucket, we don't always have a true census understanding, as in and that is tricky when it comes to our allocations, because some years we have a very high allocation. For example, this past year we had 83,000. The year prior we had almost double that. And we are not sure yet what our allocation will become for 25-26, but that is an area that we depend on, and it's important as part of our budget expenditures, et cetera. But it is something that we have to account for if it changes from year to year. And right now, Nantucket is right on the cusp between two categories, and that is why some years we see a lower allocation and some we see a higher allocation. So again, because it's around socioeconomic population on the island, we have to, and we're right on the edge with free and reduced and things like that. We have to consider that as we go forward and account for it in the rest of our budget planning.
Pat?
Yes.
It's Joe Wright. With what's going on in Washington and the Department of Mr. Trump's comments about the Department of Education, do you expect that these grants will happen?
We have received, superintendents across the country have received word that the title formulaic grants are not going to be touched, but I do not know what to expect from this administration. So we will continue to share information across superintendents in the state of Massachusetts and across the country, and try and understand what will and will not be allotted to us. Right now, those grants are very important, and we have not received word that they would be taken away. There was an original letter in the early part of the Trump administration stating that they would be stopping funding, and I believe a federal judge blocked that. So we're currently at a place where they are available to us, and hopefully that will remain. But again, everything is a little bit unpredictable right now.
Are these the only funds that were received from the government, from the federal government?
My apologies, I couldn't hear the beginning of your question.
Are these the only funds we received from the federal government?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Just can I quickly interject for just a second? I just filled in reimbursement requests just to alleviate some of the concerns about the funding. I filled last week requests for these grants that were close to $300,000, and they were approved within a day from the Department of Education. So we expect to get that. This represents almost half of the total $630,000. So hopefully we get the rest. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Martin. Rob, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, and I don't know who best to answer it. The Chapter 70 money from the state, does that have to be used in certain buckets like the federal money, or does that go into the general budget?
It goes into the general budget as a type of an offset for the budget appropriation we get from towns. Just because, like I said, it's supposed to fund 17.5% of our foundation budget, but we get so much more than that. We close to $16 million more. This goes as a revenue source for the town to offset some of the costs that our appropriations.
However you need to. Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Peter, go ahead.
Just a quick one. Beth, do you think we get penalized because of the connotation that Nantucket is so rich, we don't need the money?
I don't think that comes across in any of our federal allocations at all, because those are based on numbers that we have. That does not peel back the onion, so to speak, and see what actually is going on. I mean, we're looking at our English learner population and the percentage of our full student body and what that represents, the numbers that we have. Our IDEA grant is based on the number of special education students that we serve. Title I is probably the only situation where it's a little bit precarious simply because, again, we are not dealing with a census that is entirely straightforward. When we give the census here in Nantucket, I know that it's not always entirely accurate, but that is something that we hope to remediate. And certainly, again, like I said, we're on that fringe between one category and another, and we just hope that we can maintain the higher expenses. But I don't think that that we are penalized for that.
Thank you.
Sure. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this slide is how we break down our FY 2026 budget. You'll see that our schools have the largest allocations, with the Nantucket High School being the largest at 8.7 million. The CPS is next at NES is next at 7.1 million, NIS at 6.3 million, and CPS at 5.8 million. And then we have our central office budget, which supports the professional learning and the centralized district needs. We have our facilities budget, which is the largest outside of the academic institutions here. And then athletics and technology are our smaller budgets and how we are split up. So I'm going to turn this over to Martin.
So this is the excuse me. This is the visual representation I referred to earlier, the breakdown between expense and payroll. I am particularly worried about the operating expense side of our budget. Payroll is a given, more or less, because we have contractual obligations. Obviously, we do not know how we would feel possible retirements and positions that become available, or at how we would hire at what salary levels. But the expense budget, as you can see, is getting smaller. When I started, it was a straightforward 80-20 split. Right now it's 83-17. So if anything gives me sleepless nights in this budget is the operating side. The biggest part of the operating side is obviously facilities. As well as we have here is the expense for tuition, for special education tuitions and things like that, professional development, supplies, books. But yeah, the biggest by far are, as everybody knows, repair and maintenance is challenging on Nantucket. Our buildings are big and they need a lot of repair and maintenance. First of all, it's difficult to find contractors, and the prices have gone through the roof for both labor and materials over the past several years. So that's an additional challenge as well. Next slide, please. Community school revenue breakdown. So you received, as part of the several budget that I sent as support for this presentation, the community school breakdown. This just shows the revenue sources for the community school. As you know, this year we're getting a $600,000 general fund subsidy, which helps to maintain the programs of that the community school offers affordable and within reach to all Island residents. And the rest of the other two components of the revenue side of the community school budget are gifts and donations and participant fees. Gifts and donations peaked around COVID years. As you can see, 22 actual, 20 and 23, it was 174, 206. Since then, they have kind of evened out somewhat, and they range anywhere between 110 and 150. The participant fees, we're seeing a welcome growth in that. There is a lot more programs being offered, and community school has hired appropriately, but that part of their budget, the payroll and the health insurance especially is a challenge. So that's just the situation with the community school. This is just a revenue presentation slide. And next slide.
I think this is me.
Yeah.
So in this case, we wanted to share with you the parameters that the district leadership team is using to build this budget. And some of these are clear, and some I will actually refer to a slide that will come up next. The first bullet is that we are recommending our budget needs that are linked to our district and school goals, as well as the district's instructional focus, with particular attention to access and equity for all students. I will show in the next slide our instructional vision, which hopefully will give you a little bit of an inside look as to our strategic planning and what we are doing to maximize our resources and provide the support and instructional support that our students need. So the next bullet is that we expected that the district and the building budgets for 25-26 will be based on projected enrollments, curricular and instructional needs, and continued professional growth of all staff. So we look carefully at the number of students that are with us, the curriculum and the type of instruction that we're offering. Do we need more training for our teachers? Do we need more support for our students? And all of that comes into the budget planning. Bullet 3 is determining essential services for all of our students at each grade level. So this is important in having that. Bullet 4 is continuing to support programs that sustain academic growth and achievement, as well as physical, social, and emotional development of our children. We want to ensure that all budgets reflect actual expenditures in the last 3 years. And we certainly want to continue tapping revenue streams other than the operating budget, such as our federal and state grant opportunities and the partnerships that we have, which are so valuable with our local and state nonprofit organizations. So this is our new NPS instructional focus, and this is a slide that we have shared with the school committee, which we have shared with our teachers. It was shared in the opening day of school, and this is what we are working on throughout this year and beyond. So in looking at the central circle, you'll see that there's a green circle on the inside, and these are overarching areas that we are focusing on throughout. We're talking about sheltered English immersion, which has to do with our English learners. As a district with about 47% of our students speaking a language other than English at home, and about 25% English learners. This is very important that our teachers and our instruction is provided with full access for our English learners. An inclusive instruction model, we need to make sure that we are including all of our students and that they all have the ability to succeed, and we are making adjustments so that our students are able to be successful. And universal design for learning is how we build our instructional practices so that again, all of our students have access, and there are voices and choices that are being heard and provided for our students. So we have 5 areas that we are focusing on, and they basically act in a cyclical way. So I'll start with objectives, which is at the top left here. And we have some guiding questions, which we are using as the way to support ourselves as we are using this instructional focus throughout the year to provide our professional development and to continue to move professional learning forward. So first question is, which essential learning outcomes have we ensured students learn? So we need to make sure that we know exactly what our students need to know to move to the next grade level, to have reached mastery and move to the next grade level. The next one is checking for understanding, and this is, what evidence do we have that we've ensured mastery of those essential learning outcomes? The next is criteria for success, and we are asking ourselves, what are the specific names of the students who require those additional times and more support to master those essential learning outcomes? What additional time and support will teams need to ensure that students are mastering the essential learning outcomes? And then what actions will our teams take to extend learning for students who already have mastered essential learning outcomes? So that's your enrichment part. Those are for students who need a little more. The next criteria is engaging instruction, which is so important, especially now. What are the instructional practices? How are we making them motivating and engaging for students? We need to make sure that there is a strong connection between what students are learning and what they are seeing and feeling in the world. Real world instruction, real world learning is key. We need to make sure that that we have built in problems for our students so that they can connect their learning to what they see around them all the time. How does a teacher facilitate instruction? So how is a teacher supporting instruction happening with students, but is not necessarily doing all of the work? How are we getting our students to do the work? And how do our students construct their learning? So that's an important area there. The last one is safe learning environment, which is really key to a successful school. How do we create a learning environment in all of our classrooms that motivates students to take academic risks? Students need to feel comfortable and they need to feel confident so that they can make mistakes that will support and help their learning and help them to grow and get better. So the other small piece to share with you is we have a little number in each of these 5 focus areas, and these numbers are actually parts of the teacher evaluation rubric. So our teachers are evaluated yearly based on certain performance outcomes, and these are the standards and indicators that tie directly to these 5 objectives. So this is not something that is just created kind of in a void. We are really bringing it down to what we are evaluating our teachers on. So it ties directly into the evaluation process, and that makes it all the more meaningful and connected. So I wanted to just share that with you so that you had an understanding of where we're going. And I'll move to the next slide to share our budget increases. So due to substantial increases in our salaries, as we have shared with you already, for the contractual bargaining agreements that we have obtained, there won't be any budget increases for staffing above our roll forward amount for the current year. There will be a $300,000 one-time increase to be utilized for purchase of new ELA curriculum district-wide. So I'm sure there are questions about what that means. I'm going to continue to share what we will accomplish with the budget. We expect to be able to maintain our efforts to close our gaps in academic learning and address social emotional needs of all of our students. We will continue to provide those strong supports for special education programs and services, including targeted interventions for students in need. We will sustain our high quality professional development for educators with a specific focus on literacy, social studies, math, and science. These are the 4 key educational areas, and continue to promote high leverage instruction for our growing English learner population through improving sheltered English immersion practices, and you saw that in our instructional vision. And build teacher instructional practices through a student-centered instructional coaching model across the district. So these are the areas that we are really focusing on to make sure we're using every dollar that is provided to us to support student learning and growth and really pushing our students forward. Although we are not adding more to our, as we said in the previous slide, to new positions, we are looking at the positions that we currently have and looking at the retirements that we have, reallocating positions through attrition, and really trying to understand how we can make the most of our budget without needing to add. And in fact, we feel very comfortable that we will be able to do this. Our population and our growth is minimal from this year. We assume that next year we will not have a massive number of new enrollments in our schools. So we feel that this is adequate for next year. So I believe we've come to the end, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Is it okay if I stop sharing screen?
Yes, that would be fine.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, I saw your hand first. Go ahead, please.
Beth, do you have statistics as to how we compare in terms of reading and math skills to other districts on the mainland? Or
Yes, we use several different points of data to compare ourselves. We use MCAS, of course, which is the summative assessment that all students in grades 3 through 10 must complete. And, we certainly have comparisons. We are not in the place we would like to be. Coming out of the pandemic, the entire state was much lower than was expected and desired. So we know we have some growth areas in English language arts and literacy and math, but we're making some very conscious decisions around curriculum, around instructional practice, with the types of materials we're using. We've just adopted a new math program that's in its second year, and we're seeing some slight growth. So it does take some time to see the growth after you've adopted a new curriculum, and it takes time for teachers to really have a strong understanding of the curriculum that they're teaching. So we're putting a lot of energy and time into professional development for our teachers to make sure that they understand very well. The other point that we use is a nationally normed benchmark assessment, which is called MAP, or Measures of Academic Progress. This is a test that is taken 3 times a year, and it is something that we take from grade K or kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. And those scores help us understand where students are moving and how they are improving with growth and achievement. And we can drill down to some specifics around curriculum and around standards. So those are the ways that we identify the areas that we need to improve on and the areas that we're doing well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, I saw your hand next. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. Beth, just a quick question. Based on the leveling of the population of students in the school, is there still thought that we're going to need another school in a few years?
Well, that's a really good question. We have 2 schools that are quite old. We have our middle school, which was built in 1955, and our elementary school that was built, I believe, and Kim Kubish is here if she remembers, or Chip Clooney, is it 1986, 87? Trying to remember.
Originally it was 77, and then
Thank you.
addition is 89.
The high school was 88. So whether or not we we need to build a building for enrollment, that is going to depend also on how we're using our spaces to teach our students. We are now in a situation where we do not have adequate labs, science labs, technology labs, abilities to grow our vocational technical areas, which is something that's really needed on the island because of the structures that we have. And so in looking forward and what our students really need, I mean, we're talking about careers like, drone managers and things like that. We've got to be able to plan as best we can for the careers that our students are going to have that may not even have been created yet. And so having buildings that are updated and much more state-of-the-art and much more prepared to instruct our students to be able to do those things is really key. So even if our enrollment levels out, it is really key for us, or really important for us, to have those opportunities to build on. And my hope is that we do consider that. The 2 buildings are quite old, and at some point we're going to see the need for adjusting anyway, and providing more updated buildings. So whether or not we need a new school because of enrollment, we still need to consider some new buildings or massive renovations to the ones that we currently have.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jeremy, I'll go to you next.
Great. I had a qualitative and a quantitative question. How is the school doing, and how are the students doing when you take these various metrics on the education and you compare it to the rest of the state?
So if we're looking at MCAS, we are unfortunately below the state. Now, in some cases, for example, our 10th grade is doing very well. Our 10th grade has scores that are higher than the state, slightly higher or equal to our state results. For grades 3 through 8, it has been a little bit more of a challenge in moving students forward. I think some of that, again, the pandemic feels like ages away, but for our students, it's not the case. It takes them longer. It takes us longer to move students forward. We are also looking at brand new curriculum that we're using, and you need a 3-year curve for that to really sink in and make appropriate gains. The curriculum that we're using is high quality instructional materials, and that is a key piece to making sure that growth and achievement can happen. The state requests that people use high quality instructional materials, so that's what we're working on, is making sure that at all of our levels and all of our content areas that we have that high quality instructional material in place for our students. We understand that now, but that's just our summative assessment. So that's the MCAS, and that's a 1-year final test that happens for grades 3 through 10. When we look at the other assessment that we have, that is a nationally reviewed test, which means we are compared to all of the other students at the same grade level as our students. So if we're looking at a 3rd grade class, we're looking at all of the other 3rd grade classes across the nation and related to national standards and where we fit in. And with that, it gives us a little bit of a better picture, because this happens 3 times a year at different times of the year. And it helps us to see the amount of growth that our students are making and how they are achieving and moving towards achievement. It also helps us understand how our special populations are achieving, our special education students who are receiving intervention, which is basically targeted instruction and support. And so that assessment is definitely an area that it helps us to understand better. MCAS is a one-time deal. It's a one shot in a year. So rather than just that one snapshot at the end of the year, having the opportunity to look at other assessments, and also obviously local assessments. Our teachers are building their own assessments, classroom benchmark assessments too. So all of that gives us a picture. We know the area we need to work on, and it is very indicative of where the state also needs to work on. We are just a little bit below, and we know that we need to be building up. I'm thankful that we're using our benchmark assessments and seeing that across the nation we are in a better place than what we're seeing on MCAS. So that's important to keep in mind.
Okay, and so now away from the qualitative, ECL or the special education takes up roughly 30% of the cost, the way you allocate it.
Very much.
On the spending, when you adjust for that, how are we doing relative to the rest of the state and relative historically? We talked about this last year, and it almost seemed as if on an inflation adjusted basis, we're spending less per student adjusted for the special needs than, let's say, 10 years ago. And I wondered if that's something you focus on, and will more money help you?
Special education is an area that is very difficult for us to predict. We have the students that we currently have, but you could have a student coming into our district that has a very expensive special need. And that might mean an outside placement with medical needs that could be upwards of $400,000 a year. So it is very hard for us to determine that. With regard to the current expenditures that we have, I might turn this over to Martin and Deb Gately, who's our special education director. Martin, you're the one who's been working with the special education needs.
My question was, I understand the special educational needs and the variability in what you do. My question is trying to drive to the net of that. For the people, the 70% of the budget that's not special needs. My recollection from a year ago's conversation was, if we looked at that net amount, that seemed as if we were underspending versus what we spent a decade ago. And I wondered if you ever looked at it that way, and how that amount compares to the rest of the state. I do understand that special needs is very expensive and very variable. But net of that was what I was curious about.
I would suggest that we are spending as much or perhaps even more than the rest of the state, simply because it is a challenge for our students with the fact that sometimes we keep a lot of our programs, which in other districts are sent off site. We keep our programs in-house, meaning we want to make sure that programs can support students who live here and have their families here, as opposed to a family that might have a special needs student on the mainland, and they can send that student to a collaborative, which is a day school. We don't have that opportunity here, so our expenses are actually higher in some cases. But Martin, is there anything you wanted to share about this, and particularly the 10-year piece?
I don't have specific information 10 years back regarding special education per child. The expenses.
And special education, I understand. I was thinking about everybody else, the 70% not special ed. And I recollect a year ago, we talked about that net amount. And it appeared to me then, and it still appears, that inflation adjusted, our spending has been decreasing per student, net of the special needs.
Again, I think that goes to the per pupil expenditure. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
So I think, Martin, you can share, you shared the slide, and if you want to explain why that looks a little different.
Well, you're right. Let's say the difference in 2010, 2011 in the per pupil was $7,500. And now it's $6,100. So looking at that metric over 12 years, because the latest data is 22-23, the gap between us and the state has narrowed. So that's absolutely true as an observation. My personal take is that within the next 3 years, that gap would widen because of the contract that we have, and it's carrying through our budget over these 3 years with the teachers. And I think that the gap would widen with the state, but is it less than the gap it was 12 years ago? Yes, that's true. We were spending $7,500 more than the average state in 2011, and now we're $6,100. So.
Okay. So I guess my final question is, where do you need more money?
I know Martin will. I know what Martin will say. Go ahead.
I already shared. My biggest challenge is the operating side of the budget. And again, we're not asking for more money. We'll be fine with the budget appropriation we're given. We have worked with the director of finance for the town, Brian Turbit, and the town manager, Libby Gibson. We've met. We feel comfortable with the budget allocation we are getting. 100%, but my challenge is personally where I foresee within the next 3 years is we need to update the operating side of the budget to make it more realistic, because we're kind of playing catch up with the costs for repair and maintenance, with the cost for tuition. We just received a letter that the director of special services, Deb Gately, shared with me 2 days ago that retroactively the rates from a out-of-district residential school are going to go up by more than 5%. So let's say on the 12th of February, I believe this was sent, or whenever, they are saying as of February 1st, the next invoice you receive from us for the student you have that you're responsible for here, we're co-sharing that student with another district. The expenses for the student have increased already. So the special education costs are going steadily up, and that's a challenge. The other challenge that presents for us is they have now an increased revenue stream with this extra money that they're getting per student, and they're hiring the best clinicians, the best therapists. We're competing with them for some positions that we have available in our budget that we haven't been able to fill because it's difficult. And it's not just us seeing this challenge of Island. When I go to the MASBO that I am a member with, this is the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials, and we have by monthly meetings, and all the other finance directors for school districts have shared the same thing. They are being pressed hard, and they're fighting to hire talent that helps in those areas. We're now pinned against these schools that are having more revenues. They're hiring at higher rates than we can. So those are the
Thank you.
challenges. Those are my challenges that I see.
Thank you. Denise? Go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Beth and Martin, very nice to see you and very nice to see all of your team here. It's always, you're one of our best FinCom meetings of the year because you all show up. So thank you very much. It's nice to see all of you and you know, as usual, congratulations on all the good work that you do. My question is around retention, open positions, recruiting. So if you give us I don't know how many open positions you have right now, Beth, and
So sure, happy to share that. So currently in our 24-25 budgets, because we're halfway through the year here, we only have, I believe, one position open, or two position opens, which are very specialized, and again, dealing with special education and high needs students. So we're talking about a school psychologist. School psychologists are like gold. If you can hold on to one and keep them, it's like gold. And I am not the only. We are not the only district that is desperately searching for school psychologists. So that is one. Another one is a BCBA, which is a behavioral consultant, and behavioral consultants are also worth their weight in gold. So these are positions that are really hard to maintain and fill based on the fact that there are other institutions, educational institutions that Martin shared, who are snatching up these positions to work with very high special needs students outside in specialized schools. So we have not been able to fill those two positions. But prior to this past year, we struggled to fill all of our positions and had to get creative in how we were able to fill positions. But this year, knock on wood, and hopefully next year, we will see that that we will have that we've been able to fill our positions. Certainly, classroom teachers, our support people, we've been able to fill all those positions. So that's the current situation. For next year, we do see retirements, and we do hope to retain more teachers this year. Our current retention rate is about 20%. I mean, we lose about 20%, and our hiring for 20%. But I have a feeling that we are in a better place this year. Knock on wood. It's still early, but we are not seeing as many people moving on to different roles. This is a difficult place for people to live and work. Housing continues to be the #1 issue that our teachers deal with. They cannot afford housing here. What they have is not always perfect. They often come for 10 months and then have to find summer housing, or they have to leave. And it's really hard to become part of a community when you are asked to leave in June. And so that's not easy. And the prices are expensive to try and buy or build. So that is the #1 issue, I would say, in retaining teachers. And so that is a challenge, but we have found ways around that to do everything we can. The Nantucket Education Trust is really looking very carefully at some potential growth areas that we can build more on. So if we can find housing for teachers that is good quality and will allow them to stay for a longer period of time, then that is exactly what will allow us to see real success. When you're changing teachers every 3 to 5 years, it is much harder, and that is probably a portion of why we struggle with keeping our scores at the state level. Other districts do not have the same issues that we do around teacher retention. So, but I'm hoping that this year we'll see things a little differently coming up.
Thank you, Beth.
Sure.
Joanna, to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you for a really good presentation, Beth. I just have a couple of questions. In the past, we've gone through, and I know it was in the packet, and I did look at them. You've taken us through facilities, technology, and athletics as part of this presentation and showed us a chart so that we could compare year over year the expenditures and things that had happened in those areas. And I would really encourage you to continue to do that so that we can see as a group how those areas are impacted and the portions of the budget that they represent. That being said, when I looked at those areas, I had a couple of concerns. One of them is in the facilities department. Like, I wanted to really understand. I saw that 54% of the facilities budget is made up of payroll, and that is slightly high for the state average in terms of how much money facilities is spending on payroll versus actual investments in the facilities. And I wanted to understand, like, what is on tap for facilities for this year in particular, and also the technology, like what's the technology plan for this year? So let's just start there.
So I can certainly say that, again, 54% goes to payroll, and that's simply because we can't, we want to make sure we can retain custodians here on the island. Definitely, this is an area that, Martin has shared. The operating budget is what we are really needing to focus on this year. Now, like I said, that we have evened out a little bit with our enrollment. We can turn any additional dollars to our facilities needs. And Chip, you can certainly share anything that is specific around that. General maintenance is a big part of it, but we obviously have some projects. The rates have increased across the board, so we have to maintain that. We have to try and keep that up. And like I said, if there's anything specific you want to share, Chip, that you've seen in developing your portion of the budget, feel free.
Right. I think when we talked about the new buildings and that kind of thing, infrastructure for our buildings is a big issue for us. And we have local contractors, we have off-island companies that come, and the expenses have gotten just increasingly higher every year and all the time. So we are constantly working, we're repairing roofs. These things are all 20 years old, these roofs, everything's coming up. So we're constantly working on these major projects that these capital projects are helping us with.
And if I can interject very quickly, this is the first year ever since I've been here, which is 11 years now, that we have expanded our NPS building improvement capital article, and I know Brian would be happy. We have wiped out everything, and it's only February. So we use this. Obviously, there is supplemental funding, just like Chip mentioned, to the operating side of the budget that you're seeing in these slides, and that comes in the form of capital. With in years past, we've always finished the prior year, then we go into the current year. We still have residual amounts left in some capital articles, depending on the scope of projects. This year seems like we are in a perfect storm situation. We just found out that some kitchen equipment needs to be replaced, so we're going through that. It's just it's been a challenge. I can't lie. This is, like I said, for the first time, we will zero out all capital accounts prior and current at the end of this fiscal year. Everything will be spent. We just we need every single dollar that we have in every fund for the maintenance, repair and maintenance of facilities. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. My next question is about the athletics department, right? I looked at it's 2% of your total budget, right? And there's a range, right, for schools of our size that is somewhere between 1% and 5%. And considering that athletics are largely the only activity that, say, kids who age out of the Boys and Girls Club and then go into high school, it's the only activity that we really support for them. And we have a great sports community on Nantucket. So can you talk a little bit about the investment and how you determine the investment that's made in the athletics department?
So every year we start obviously with payroll, and payroll here is a little different than in other places because it includes a wide variety of coaching stipends. Our latest contract with the teachers included additions of stipends. Now we've had challenges hiring for certain positions, so we've made them a paid position, and we've added sports also throughout the district, and so that has expanded. So that payroll side of it, of the athletics, is going to grow because of the stipends side of it. And because of the variety of sports that we offer. In addition to that, I just want to point out this is the athletics also has a revolving account where all participant fees go. So we expend yearly an additional $200,000, 150 to 200,000 from that revolving account as well, which supplements the budget that you see in front of you. So our spending, yes, it could be higher percentage-wise, I believe. Amount-wise, it's comparable to other districts. It's for the percentage-wise, it's lower because of the size of our budget.
Do you know the percentage of students in the district that participate in sports?
It's very high. It's over 60%, between 60 and 70%.
Mm-hmm.
And we're one of the highest in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one of the highest percentages, if I'm not mistaken, of kids that participate in more than one sport.
Yes.
Right. So that's what I was trying to get at that. And you did answer my question. I was going to ask how much additional money is invested in this budget, but that sort of begs the question about looking for or investing in additional monies in athletics for the students, because it is one of their few outlets on the island that they have in terms of, mental health and that sort of thing. I only have a couple more questions. The next thing is about the community school and fundraising and that budget, and looking at, historically it's had some operating losses. How do you feel the community school is performing, and what types of fundraising or additional fundraising do you think that it can implement?
Go ahead.
I will defer part of this question to the executive director of the community school, Alicia Garcia Day. I just want to answer one part of it. We cannot necessarily fundraise, because we're not a community school is not a non-profit organization, but these are just grants that the community school writes for specific purposes, and gifts and donations by citizens and organizations that come for a variety of programs, and they support these programs. But I would I think Alicia is part of the call, so I would defer to her to answer the rest of the question.
Let me check in with her.
Yeah, she might have stepped off. So that's basically what we try to do. It's a challenging budget, because it's comprised of 7 separate accounts that we need to balance, and they comprise the community school, all the separate programs. So you probably saw that it's completely different presentation format than everything else we present, simply because of the nature of its operation. It is based on revolving accounts. As far as the deficits, this year, I think the community school is doing great revenue-wise. The challenges are on the expense side, being medical insurance. The community school has to cover its own medical insurance costs, which are upwards of $300,000. And also they've struggled hiring competitively, because the environment changing on the island, obviously with the update to the contracts on the town and school side. The community school is competing with the school and the town as well for employees. I hate to pin the two organizations against each other, and we support them in every possible way, but that's the reality. So it's been difficult for them to hire and retain. So those are the challenges that the community school faces.
I mean, I am a huge supporter, and I think it offers the community a great deal of support for both the children and for parents. So I think it's just important for us to understand and know what's happening in that budget, and to give for us as a group to be able to support that. I think the last question I have is really around the role of AI, or artificial intelligence, and sort of.
I'll tell you.
We couldn't go through this meeting without bringing that up, because it really is sort of, one of those cutting edge things right now that everybody's talking about. And how can you use it, and how can you harness it, and what's happening in terms of basically R&D? Like, how are you?
Right. So we are, so it's fascinating. AI is one of those technologies that moves so quickly that we think we've gotten a little bit of a hold on it when it's all of a sudden already outdated. The information that we've learned is already outdated. Our students are very fast consumers and can understand and work their way with AI so quickly. There are definitely programs out there that we're learning to use better. There is nothing officially that officially supports, at least up until now, K-12 students. And that's what we really need to find. We need to find not your typical chat GPT, which anybody, it's open, just open AI. We need to find something that is specific for K-12 so that we can teach students how to actually use AI to their advantage. And we need to look at it as a tool. It's very challenging because at the high school level, there is, in middle school, I would say, there's a lot of question as to, do we even block AI? And some districts have thought about that. But I think that we need to look at it differently, and we need to learn, we need to teach children how to responsibly use AI and when it is important to use it and how it can be used as a tool. There's a lot of learning that we're doing. As many workshops and webinars as we can do. Our tech director, who I do not think she was able to come, although she has her hand up. If you'd like to get some answers from her, I'm sure she'd be happy to speak about this. And I know she might have a little bit more. Stephanie, are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself and speak with us?
Stephanie.
I wonder if she had her hand up. I wonder if some of them, some of our group is as a spectator, not as a presenter.
They should be able to unmute.
They should be able to unmute and do it.
That's okay. I mean, I really was wanting to make sure it was on your radar, Beth.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely. Stephanie Hoban, who's our tech director, is actually looking into some AI tools that we could purchase and have for our students and start actually training our students. And digital literacy is such an important piece that we need to bring into our curriculum. So we're aware of it and are looking into how we can do that as sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that next year you'll include a few more slides on the comparatives for those departments. Thank you.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Jill, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Pretty much everybody has the same questions that I wanted to, so that's good. But I have one question. I love to ask this. When is pickleball going to be a sanctioned sport at the high school level?
I would have to talk to Travis Lombardi about that. See if there's, first of all, I don't know if it is recognized yet by MIAA as a sanctioned sport. So if and when that happens, then I will bet you anything that probably we will be looking at a pickleball team.
I hope so. I really do. It brings so many people together, and it's kind of an easier point of entry for kids too. So I think it could help. It sounds like when you said with the athletics, I thought we had 80% participation. So it sounds like it might have gone down a little bit.
I'd have to get the latest numbers. The last number that I had was I just need to check in with Travis on it. The last number I believe was about 75%, but I said 60 to 70 because I think it has dropped a little bit. We had some sports that were a little hard to fill. Our girls hockey team was a little bit low. A couple of others, but we've also added others, smaller sports, like we have track and field, we have indoor track for winter, so that's new. Our middle school, we include them in the participation, so their levels may have been a little bit lower. So we had, and as we build other programs, like for example, there's a music program that our students have access to through the Nantucket Community Music School that is accounting for a small number of students, but they are they do have an available after school activity that may be something that they're interested in more so than sports, even though sports are really for everybody and anybody can be part of that. We may see some of that too. So
thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And I see Stephanie Hoban, you've got your hand up. Do you want to join us here?
I'm wondering if she's struggling to get on. Alicia Graziadei was also said she was not able to connect. So she's in, but she wasn't able to unmute and speak to the community school question. So we apologize for not having that, but I'm happy to provide any questions about AI that she might have been able to answer to the.
Oh, wait, I think I did it. Did I do it?
You got it.
Yay, tech director can figure it out. I just would like to say that I am in the process of forming a committee to figure out which AI platform to sort of purchase for the district. There are so many that are straight up for schools, Magic School AI, Flint, Brisk. And these AIs are almost like tutor bots, both for the teacher and for the student. Flint, for example, a student could write an answer on a piece of paper, show it to the camera, and be told you're missing a step, think integers. So kind of the information, like you'd want a good tutor to do, but oftentimes tutors give too much information or too little information or don't know the math themselves when it gets up to the higher level. So I know I wouldn't be able to be much help. So there's so many, and then there's AIs that will help the teachers to write lesson plans, IEPs, modify and differentiate assignments, but there are a lot of them. And so I am going to be asking teachers and the staff to help me explore them. And I think what we're going to do is make a rubric of what we want to see in a perfect AI, and then hopefully find it. And then sort of that will be the platform that we push out, because students absolutely need to know how to use it ethically. And teachers need to know what's plagiarism, what's not plagiarism. Kids need to know what's plagiarism. When do you move into the world of plagiarism? When don't you? So I'm going to a bunch of educational summits. I've joined a DESE cohort for AI, and I've just met with my ed tech instructional leadership team and asked for one of them to maybe come and join me in the grand old town of Everett, Mass. And so it's definitely on our radar. But as Beth said, there's almost too much going on, and it is really going to take a village to learn how to harness the super valuable power of it. The Destiny Library database, for example, has an AI now built into it where the librarians could say, find me the 50 books with the least circulation and weed out those books. Or a kid could say, hey, I've read all the Harry Potter books, what else? And the librarian can just ask the AI, what other books would be like Harry Potter? So it's, just increasingly going to be built into every facet of our world. And we really have to catch the tiger by the tail. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Alicia, I see you have your hand up. Are you able to connect?
I think, can you finally hear me?
I got you.
Yes.
I kept pressing that button and it was not working for me. So now I'm on a computer. I so apologize for that, Joanne. I heard your question though. So if I can go back to that for a moment, if that's okay. So Joanne, I heard you and I heard Martin respond to you and just say that we cannot fundraise. That is absolutely true. We are a municipal entity, just like the school system. We cannot fundraise. That also limits us to what grants we can apply to. So since we're not a traditional 501c3 and we often are confused and people think that we are, it does limit what we can ask for and who we can ask. So I will say that a lot of the town nonprofits like CFN are very kind and they give us a lot of funding for our programs, but there are a lot of state grants that we cannot apply for. And there are a lot of grants on the Cape that we're not eligible for that reason. So we are looking all the time for different opportunities, but we are limited in a lot of ways just based on how we're structured. Does that help?
It does. I was also sort of I was trying to get at that, but also that are there ways for you to partner with other people who can help you either receive grant money or administer like collaborations, or ways for you to make what you're doing go a little farther?
So we do that. So for example, we have applied and worked with Nantucket Education Trust to receive grants specifically for children and use them sort of as the organization to carry that money for us for that grant. We do a similar partnership with Sherburne Commons for our adult education grants that we need partnering with. And a really good example of that is our Memory Cafe program. So it's yeah, it's tricky, but we're always trying to think creatively and see what we can do to, you know, go as far as we can with that funding.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
For hands. Any other questions from committee members? Jeremy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just Beth, one last question.
Yeah.
You know, doing in our olden days, a woodworking shop or a metal shop was tremendous for many people. Didn't matter what intellect or social economic status they were in. That was a tremendous learning experience. And when you say, you know, preparing people for the next generation, you know, electronics or drone management or whatever it's going to be, I think that is really, you know, is great. How much money do you need for that?
For a new field to help people learn.
Well, again, just my own experience was back in high school. It was, you know, machine shop and learning how that old economy worked. And then, you know, woodworking is timeless.
Sure.
But how do you move that today to provide people, if you need a new building or, you know, you outsource it some way, how much money do you need to do that? You know, the robotics or whatever it's going to be, the engineering, the applied engineering.
Sure, that's a really good question. But I mean, I definitely think that one of the challenges is when we're looking at, you know, the jobs of the future, we're talking about technology that is very cutting edge and not cheap. So my guess is that it will cost quite a bit if we are looking to build more around tools and technologies that we want our students to use. Here's an interesting example. So I heard about a district that has been able to purchase a 3D, it's not really a 3D printer, but it's like a hologram, where what they can do in their nursing program is they can pull up holograms of the heart or a lung or a bone, and students can walk around the hologram and see different parts of this structure and see how surgically things could be dealt with, or if there's a problem in it.
Starting to do that, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, I mean, but that technology is not cheap. And so if we're headed in a direction where we're having more 3D printers available and more holograms and more other opportunities, you know, and again, that's our new tech director. That's her wheelhouse. She could geek out about all the technology that's out there and available. It's definitely not cheap. That's not the only thing. I mean, obviously, we want to continue to build and support the vocational programs that we have on the island and make sure that woodworking remains. That's one of our most popular classes at the high school. And if we had a second wood shop for either for high school students or for middle school students, I think it would be very, very wildly popular and attended by them. Automotive is another one. I mean, we have one automotive class, limited numbers. Our culinary class, same situation. And this is where I think the expansion would be so important and helpful for the island. And so, you know, again, if we ever get a chance at a new building, then those are the areas that we need to build into either a new building or renovate existing buildings for space that we have to be able to have more vocational labs and bays and such.
Well, I encourage you to think big on this.
Okay.
Vocational, but the applied engineering science.
Absolutely. It's exciting. There's a lot of new stuff out there. And I mean, careers we haven't even created yet. So pretty amazing.
Beth, how does the school tap into private sector funding? Understanding that you can't fundraise in the way a 501c3 does. Does Friends of Nantucket Public Schools fill this role in the way the Booster Club does for athletics?
The Friends of Nantucket Public Schools is more of an entity that supports teacher instruction. They have grants that they offer to teachers. It's not as much of a collecting private sector funding. I mean, yes, they have events that are fundraising events. And they've had a few that were very popular. I'm hoping that they come back. We've had a bit of a renaissance in the Friends of Nantucket Public Schools, so I think they're getting their footing with some new leadership and kind of a new structure. So some of that was very helpful to us, in the sense that it supported our teacher grants, supported programming that we did, field trips, support that way. But with regard to the private sector, it's challenging. Like I said, we can't fundraise, but we can accept gifts. We just have to make sure that there are, that we're not talking about gifts with strings attached and things like that. But we have been so fortunate to have the private sector provide us with funding. We have a new field house, not brand new construction wise, but the inside of the field house has been completely renovated based on very, very, we're so grateful for the people who said that they would fund that. So we're very lucky that we have that, and we want to continue to be in the good graces of the public here in Nantucket. But it's hard for us to be able to tap in, so to speak. Obviously, if people are interested in supporting us financially and providing, let us know. So.
Just and in addition to that, to what Beth already spoke about, we do get some gifts and donations that relate sometimes to positions, like offset costs for specific positions. In the past, this was the oceanography position at CPS, and we have currently in the budget also some private donors that provide funding to offset the cost of other positions in the budget. So that way we also collaborate with local organizations that want to promote whether it's certain subjects or just support programming at the schools.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I think I'll say thank you to Dr. Hallett, to Martin, to everybody who spoke. This is a very wide-ranging, thorough presentation that you all provide. And my favorite graphics every year are the demographics in the school and at the grade levels. And I think that's one of the most telling statistics about the changing face of Nantucket. So I always appreciate that. Not that everything else isn't also very interesting, but that one particular thing I look forward to. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, moving along to discussion and deliberations and potential motions on warrant articles. We will take these in order, and Articles 21 and 22 are companion articles, I believe, and this relates to the good work that the County Finance Review Committee did earlier this evening. Brian, do you want to summarize what we have before us?
Sure. Stephen, are you going to put up the first article? Thank you very much. So Article 21 is the county, the appropriation for the county assessment. So the motion would be move that $240,605 be raised and appropriated from the fiscal 2026. The article itself had 2024 inadvertently in it. It is actually 2026 tax levy and other general revenues of the town to fund the fiscal year 2026 county assessment.
Okay. May I get a motion on this, please?
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Full register. Right, but the opportunities for attendance that were in the agenda are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoever's speaking, if you could please mute. Thank you. Roll call. Joe Wright.
Yes. Aye.
Peter Schaefer.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Denise.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Anna.
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Aye for me. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Article 22, please.
So the motion here is to take no action because this only, Libby may need to help me with this, but this only would be needed if there was a disagreement and we couldn't come to an agreement on the budget between the county commissioners and the county review committee. However, I believe since you both adopted the recommended budget that this article is not needed, so we have moved to take no action on the article.
Okay, may I have a motion on this, please?
Move to take no action.
Second.
I take Joe's motion and a second from Jill, and roll call. Joe Wright.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Denise.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
And it's an aye for me. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving along to Article 72, General Bylaw Amendment, Car Rental Agencies Registration of.
Oh.
So who will be presenting that? Sorry, this is Denise jumping in.
I see, Libby, you have your hand up.
There you go.
I do have my hand up and I would like to be able to turn this over to Town Council Attorney Brian Riley if he is on. And Amy Baxter, our licensing administrator, is on as well. Brian and the board worked very hard on this article with Amy right prior to adoption of the warrant. And I think a brief summary should be provided. I know there's potentially some public comment about this, but it was also pretty extensively discussed at the board meeting when the board was adopting the warrant article.
Yes, I am here. I'm happy to address that. I'm Brian Riley with KP Law. So there was quite a bit of discussion with the select board over this. I know an article regarding this bylaw was also on last spring, and it was sort of taken off for more study. I guess to summarize, I would say that the select board, in proposing the changes that are in here, we're responding to complaints or concerns basically in two areas. One is that this bylaw establishes a medallion system for car rental agencies, and that there appear to be, Amy could address the numbers more than I could, but there appear to be at least some businesses that have a lot of medallions on hand that they're not using, which sort of defeats the purpose of having a limited number, but making them available to people who might want to engage in this. And so the proposed changes would sort of give a mechanism for the select board to hold a hearing and see whether it's appropriate to take some medallions back if they're not being used over an extended period of time. The other one had to do with peer-to-peer car sharing. There are some platforms out there. The most widely known one is Turo, T-U-R-O, and an individual can sign up and make their car available to rent out to someone who's coming in to stay for a day or a week. And so they make money off it. The platform makes some money off it. And there's concerns have been raised by the licensed car rental agencies that this is going on, and people are allowed to rent out their car without taking on all the responsibilities and expenses and licenses, et cetera, that the car rental agencies do under this bylaw. And so after much discussion, this would propose including people who are renting their car out via a peer-to-peer vehicle sharing platform, if they're doing it, if they have more than one vehicle that they're doing it for. If it's just someone who has one car and they use this platform to rent it out occasionally, just to earn a little extra income, and it's just the one car, that would not be included here. But the board decided that if it's two or more, they should be subject to this bylaw. There's also some language about increasing the number. I think it's been capped at 700 for quite a long time. So this would give the select board at least the option of increasing that in some future years. The medallions would be still transferable as they are now, from one business to another. The bylaw does now have a requirement where the business needs to get a license every year. I know there's you got some input, and these attorneys may be here to address it further. Some concern about how, you know, people may have medallions and they may have rights to keep them. The bylaw is kind of curious in that you have an annual license requirement, but then there's also this medallion system, and the current bylaw says each medallion constitutes a non-expiring right to lease one motor vehicle, so that apparently you don't need to apply for each year. And there was some input the board received that, you know, if people are going to have their medallions taken away, which isn't necessarily the thrust of these changes, that they may try to, you know, take legal action and get compensation for losing that. I personally don't think there's a great risk of that, although you never know. I would make analogies to other kind of licenses, like a common victualler or an alcohol license, where people get them, they invest a lot of money to keep that business going. With liquor licenses, they can even pledge the license to secure a loan for the business. And yet at the same time, if the select board has good reason, they can hold a hearing and take that license away, and they're not held to owe that person any compensation. So I don't want to delve into the legal issues more than that. But basically the changes that are proposed here are aimed at, one, bringing these peer-to-peer rentals in, at least to a degree, to be covered, and to allow the select board, under appropriate circumstances, to try to get back medallions that a agency may be holding on to and not using for whatever reason. I don't know, Amy may want to add in anything I forgot.
Yep. If I may, through the chair, thank you, Brian. What I would say is, piggyback on what Brian said here, is the goal was to, one, kind of bring this into the age we're living in here, to acknowledge the other platforms that folks are using to rent vehicles, which we did in the definition, and to provide more ability for the select board to have active management of this bylaw, meaning that it, one, allows for up to 100 additional medallions to be distributed per the select board at a public hearing at their discretion. Should there be fluctuations in the market in different businesses, it gives them that ability, so you're not going back and forth to town meeting to address it. So it gives them that flexibility. It also, our main goal in all of this, to bringing this into modern times here, is to really be able to go in and see, what do we have? Clean it up as needed. As we mentioned, it talks about that the medallions, which are those stickers that you see on those vehicles that they come in with the registration, we distribute those stickers. The fee is based on whether it is registered in Nantucket or not, whether they pay an excise tax or not. There's a fee if they do not. In that case, it gives us the ability to go, okay, you've used so many of your allocation, but there's 20 stickers here that you did not. The board at that time has the ability to redistribute or retire those stickers. So it doesn't allow someone to sit on things. However, again, with this additional 100 medallions, I think it gives the board that ability to, if a business needs more in a different year, they have that ability to kind of deal with that. and distribute those as needed. So I think those are the main points. It makes the transferability between licenses too, again, so that we can year to year. We added a earlier kind of registration for their renewals so that we can determine who used how many of those stickers. So again, it modernizes this a bit to acknowledge the business climate that we're in with that definition. It also, one last thing I'll say is in the active management of this bylaw here, it gives the board the ability to establish the process by which these are distributed outside of the bylaw. We've had this discussion already about a waiting list, administering that, registering those that are registered or that are using these peer-to-peer platforms. So we didn't go into detail. We don't need to in the bylaw about that process, but it does allude to that process being done, which will be done on public hearing type of situation. So I believe that addresses all of the changes, and I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you. And before I open it up to the committee, I just, one point of clarification, maybe I misunderstood. Brian, in your overview of the article, I thought I heard you say that this wouldn't apply to somebody who rents just one vehicle, but that's not how I read the article. So maybe I just didn't understand what you said.
In the definition of rental agency, which right now sounds more like a business, Hertz and Avis, that kind of thing. They're proposing to add the definition shall include any individual renting a, let me think. Amy, was that going to be two or,
Yeah.
only apply to two or more?
I believe that, and forgive us, we went through many versions of this. We did have that originally, I believe, in our last meeting. They wanted to pull that specific definition. I did have that in there originally, and at our last select board meeting, I believe they wanted, and from what I'm looking here, a clean, just the definition itself includes just a straightforward peer-to-peer. So I think that's part of the discussion. I think that we can get into on process, but that was removed from
Okay, my apologies.
Okay, so this rental agency would include an individual who rents one car.
From my understanding of the select board's wishes, yes, that it would be a stickered required for any vehicle that is rented. Yes. With no fee for that sticker because, and they want a license or a permit for that, but that obviously someone's vehicle registered on Nantucket, there's no fee for that sticker itself.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I was not vigilant in seeing who put their hand up first, but I'll go in the order I see you, and assume this is right. Peter, go ahead, please. You're muted.
This is for Amy and Brian. Was there consideration paid in any form for the original medallions that went to the agencies?
Meaning, was there consideration as far as what? I don't understand.
Did the agencies pay for the medallions?
Oh, so they pay a license?
No, not now. Did
Yeah.
they pay for them previously?
So the only way right now, obviously the year to year from us is they don't pay for the medallion if it's registered in Nantucket, $100 per medallion. For
You're not following,
but-
Amy, you're not following my question.
Yeah,
My question is, 20 years ago, did Windmill
Yeah.
pay for the medallion?
Yeah, I was getting there. So
Okay.
aside from the actual fee to us, there were some, I will pull out Hertz that has 300 now. They started with 100. Over the years, when certain agencies closed, they were transferred. What they paid, I cannot tell you. We had a recent transferred. I asked, there's no requirement currently to see that transfer documentation. The select board just approves the transfer, so I can't tell you what the amounts were. but they did do between interagency transfers of medallions multiple times throughout the years. Yes.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get to is, did the licensed agencies
Mhm.
put money in that came to the town when they got their medallions originally, and now we're saying to the new people, the churro people, that they won't have to pay that money?
Yeah, that money wasn't paid to the town. So what I'm saying is they won't have to pay for if they're getting a license and approved to have a medallion. If it's registered on Nantucket, no money, $100 if it's off island registration. That money that was paid for those medallions by Hertz or any of these other things, that was a private deal. As far as outside of that $100 fee or excise fee, that was a private transfer. If they wanted more medallions than they were given to by the town, they were allowed to get them transferred from another agency. That was a private deal between those two agencies.
Okay,
But the
I don't
town,
like-
it wasn't to the town.
Peter,
Okay.
Amy, at any time at the initial issuance of these medallions, there was no fee paid to the town to get them initially?
No, other than what I just said is zero for, they pay an excise tax and a license fee or $100 per medallion each year for the registration. That medallion is a year-to-year thing, and the medallion is a registration. We need a registration to give away that medallion. That's all. There was no initial upfront fee to the town.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Steve.
Great, thank you. Rob, go to you next, please.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who's best to answer, but the question is just about enforcement. So we currently have an illegal situation, and this purports to make it legal in some way. Like, who owns that today, and how will this change what we do if this passes? Is that you, Chief Casper?
Yeah.
I think that's me. Yeah, honestly, this will be really challenging for us. I think there's a belief that we just know who has certain cars, what are rental cars, and it's not that easy. And then the rules and laws around when we can stop someone, we certainly couldn't stop a motor vehicle if we saw one that didn't have a sticker that we thought was rented. So it's just not that simple. We also can't cross over onto people's private property if we believe maybe they have 3 or 4 rental cars and they're doing something that would be in conflict with this. We can't just go onto private property and kind of investigate that. I mean, if we had compliant people that were all coming in and doing their thing that doesn't require enforcement because people are just obeying this, then that's great. But that doesn't happen with everything. And I think this would be present some real challenges, particularly during the summer months when we are out and the busiest.
And what are the consequences of doing it illegally?
Should I answer that as far as if it's a violation of the bylaw, it's $300 a day. If you're violating a bylaw, it could be up to $300 a day. A ticket if you're written and you're found to be in violation. That would be the general fee.
Got it. And then if it doesn't get paid, can you put a lien on the car or something, or what happens there?
No, that's and I don't want to step on Chief. That would be that's a court situation as far as bylaw violations. And again, if it was a licensed, it involves a license. From our perspective, if there was violations, we would call for a public hearing with the select board, like we would in any case, and there could be suspension or removal of license if there was found to be violations. So from a licensing perspective, that's the direction we would take.
Got it. Thank you both.
Denise, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Brian, this is for you. So in section 58.2, it says license required to rent or lease vehicles, sticker required on rental vehicles. No person, business, or corporation shall engage in the business of renting, leasing, or keeping for rent any motor vehicle without first being licensed annually by the select board to do so. So let's pretend I'm a Turo car. Does that mean I need a medallion?
I believe the answer is yes. You would need an annual license from the select board. But I
So
believe-
Brian, just, sorry, is the annual license equal to getting a medallion? It doesn't say medallion on anywhere on that part.
Right. I believe those have been almost treated as equivalent. Oh, I mean, when you got a business like Hertz, they get one license per year, but then they need a medallion for each vehicle.
Okay,
So I think if you have one car, then arguably at least you need a license and one medallion.
so you need both. And then you also need the sticker.
Sticker is a medallion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my first question. Lee, did you want to say something before I carry on?
I was just gonna say the sticker is the medallion. And the sticker and medallion are used interchangeably in here. We should probably consistentize that at some point, but they're the same thing.
Okay, because between license, sticker, and medallion, I was going, okay, who's on first here? So my second question is, I realize this is a 30-year-old bylaw that you're trying to bring into the 2026, and I applaud all the effort that it takes and the thinking of it. And I think, and I compare this to, and maybe my comparison is incorrect, and Amy, you'll be able to correct me, which I would appreciate. We have taxis get medallions, and yet we haven't done anything about Lyft or Uber.
I can address that if I can, or at least try.
Sure.
This very similar issue came up when Lyft and Uber started. People started using it, and obviously the people who pay for their taxi medallions were not happy about it. I think there was some discussion on the town level, but then the Commonwealth jumped in and adopted new statutes governing that, where they have to register with the state. Uber and Lyft have to register with the state if these ride share things are used in town. The town gets a portion of the money that the Commonwealth collects. So here there are a very small number of peer-to-peer car rental bills in the legislature right now. I really couldn't guess as to whether they're going to go anywhere or how soon. But that's really the reason why you don't have a bylaw for things like Uber and Lyft, as the Commonwealth took it over. So far, they have not with this peer-to-peer rental.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
I'm gonna use the privilege of being chair for a day and jump the line here, Jill, and ask a follow-up question. Because the state wants to take up the issue, then we just don't? I mean, can't we do something about it also? I'm talking about the Lyft and Uber versus taxis issue.
I see. Well, I mean, the general rule with bylaws is town has pretty broad discretion to adopt one, as long as it doesn't conflict with state law. So if we came up with one and town meeting voted it, the Attorney General would review it and see if it conflicts, or if they think the statute on the same subject kind of occupies the field and we don't want inconsistent bylaws around. As a practical matter, I know that, other towns were talking about this, dealing with their angry taxi businesses. But as soon as the state law came in, it sort of died away. So as far as I know, other towns haven't been trying to regulate the ride shares.
I see. Okay, thank you. Jill?
Hi, yes. I'm not sure who could answer this, maybe, so Brian, or Amy. Can you break down the excise tax for me with these cars? So Turo, we kind of don't have the data if people are bringing over cars to rent them, but we kind of assume that they're cars that are here, licensed here, and have an excise tax that they're paying. The how many cars through the rental agencies that get medallions pay excise tax? And while we're talking about Uber and Lyft, do we know how many of those are paying excise tax?
I'll start. The Uber and Lyft, no. I would have to look and see in the past year how many off-island vehicles, as far as the current rental car companies. I'd probably split down the middle. I know a lot of Hertz cars are from off-island. You can run through the airport and see a lot of those license plates are out-of-state license plates, depending on the vehicles they bring in. The smaller agencies tend to be local, so it's the excise tax is going to be based on obviously where it's registered. So as far as the amounts, I don't have the amounts, so I don't know if we can get that information, but I don't have that current number. No.
I think that's a really important data point for us to know personally, because it seems like that's a privilege. Like if you paid the excise tax, maybe you ought to get a privilege that goes with that, or, you know, it's already a known car and it's here, and that actually kind of helps the police department too. My other question is, since it looks like no one has ever regulated Turo yet, not in Massachusetts, is the state talking about offering any guidance? It feels like we're going ahead of the state. Maybe they're not going to do it, but they did do it for the Uber and Lyft situation.
To my knowledge, the state is not out there offering guidance on, here's what we think you can do, here's what you should avoid, anything like that. If I could just, I'll circle back for a second to the excise tax. The original bylaw came in, I don't know, I think over 30 years ago. And I don't know exactly what happened before this happened, but in the early 90s, the town actually got a special act of the legislature that said Nantucket is authorized to adopt bylaws concerning car rental agencies. And that special act actually included that excise, if a vehicle excise has been paid to the town of Nantucket, they get a break on any fee. I don't know where that came from, but it wasn't a special act, and so the bylaw adopted that because they really needed to.
And my last question is, why are we putting in the Turo rule that we're talking about, the peer-to-peer? Why is that in this bylaw? Could this have been addressed in a different law? Like, could we have separated these things for the time being? I just think like a voter, and I think I could get really confused about this particular warrant article, because we're kind of talking about, I don't know that we're talking about a business when you're talking about one car. I don't know. And I think you all don't know the answer to that either, from what I understand and watching the meetings before, but the car rental business is a business. So why did these come together in one article?
I don't know if anyone else wants to answer that. And that we had that discussion at the select board. We've had this very discussion. We tried to separate it, and this was the consensus that it came down to. So I don't know if anyone else wants to address that.
Well, there was some discussion about whether to, through one way or another, but not in a bylaw, try to get information on, well, how many cars are we really talking about that are using Turo, and how often, and how many people have more than one that they're doing it with. But ultimately, the board voted to put, what's in the warrant now, which would include people using Turo or similar things, into the license sticker pipeline.
Okay, thank you.
Libby, I'll go to you first.
Thank you. I was just going to follow a little bit up on what Jill was just asking. I don't really know the answer to how would you separate it, but there was a lot of discussion, and there has been a lot of discussion over the past 2 to 3 years about whether or not Turo is a business that is covered by this bylaw. The law is gray as we understand it from town council, and there are arguments on both sides that having one vehicle that you rent through Turo, whether or not that is a business. There's an argument to be made that that's not a business. That's just a little thing on the side that you do. It is not your business activity. Quite different from an Avis or a Hertz type of car rental agency where that is the sole business. However, I think what has started to happen is people are not just renting one vehicle. They're renting multiple vehicles on the Turo platform. And that is what has started to generate this whole issue. And is that a business?
But yeah, where's that drawing the line, I guess, is what I'm asking.
So this is why you can see this became very complicated. And if I urge people to go back and watch the select board meeting, two of them on this, if not more, over the past couple of years. And I think this, where we landed was the, I guess I'll say, least complicated way to deal with this, if that's even possible.
Yeah, I just feel like we're lumping in residential with, but that's why I want to think about this in terms of the excise tax. Who pays the tax? And can we start looking at it through that and getting that information? And then for the people who are on Turo, I don't think they're starting some LLC to as a business, but we know the car rental companies have that, or that they're incorporated in some way. Okay, I'm gonna wait to hear from other people. Thank you. Thank you all.
Jeremy, go ahead, please.
I was just hitting the mute button. So I was curious first, how many medallions will be available out of the existing 700 and maybe the extra 100 that will be available for individuals using Turo? That's my first question.
Shall I answer? I'll answer that. So currently, yes, we have 700. We know for sure we have 8 available that are unused from a former agency. And we're hoping with this process, with this rewriting of this, we can go back in a public hearing this year and determine how many medallions or stickers have actually been issued. And those that have not or have not been used, those become surplus. And the board from there can make that decision to reissue or how they determine that. And then again, if this did go through, they would have an additional 100 on top of that to issue at their discretion. So the estimate of 100 that's been thrown around is based on the number of stickers that have not been issued over the past 5 to 10 years, the average number in that 700 that haven't been issued. And it averages about 100 a year, if not more, that aren't used, meaning we do not receive a registration, either on island or off island registration for vehicles for up to 100 or more vehicles each year in that 700.
So the short answer is, if this passes, about 200 medallion stickers would be available for the existing businesses to compete for and for individuals to compete for.
Approximately, yes, if all that we talked about do become available, and we have talked already about and would be able to determine a process by which they would be distributed, meaning a waiting list or other type of application.
And did the select board get information on how many rentals Turo did in our zip code last year?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if anyone has, if we're even able to get that. We don't have an exact number. I'll leave that. I don't know if Brian knows the answer about getting that information.
So what we do know is that the Hertz and Windmill and the other guys at the airport, they charge roughly $500 a day, and they have a ton of unused ones. And then we know that Turo advertises at plus or minus $100 a day, where we don't know the actual usage. Are those the actual facts that we know at this juncture?
I would say we've gotten estimates of 100 to 200 vehicles being rented through Turo, but that's been given to us by current agencies that, you know, are identifying it. From my information, we can't identify through the site exactly how many. And again, legally, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we have an accurate number.
Okay, so if I could summarize, and Brian, maybe you could, or Libby, correct me if I'm wrong. We have this proposal, this warrant could create 200-ish medallions for individuals with Turo to use in a way that is unenforceable. And the whole reason we're going through this entire exercise is to try and prevent a whole bunch of cars coming onto the island to use Turo. Have I missed anything in this?
Yeah, Jeremy, I don't think that's a fair characterization. I think there's several issues at play here. There's people who want to be able to operate as legitimate businesses and renting cars. That's one issue. There's another issue about the public service that is due from the holders of these medallions. I mean, you know, part of the agreement was you get a medallion because you're going to use it, and they're not being used. So that's another issue. And I think there are other concerns. So, and with respect to your numbers about how many rentals were done through Turo, nobody has that information. I haven't seen it from various sources, and I'd ask that, you know, we stick to what we have before us, and then if we can request and get some verifiable data, we can discuss it, but otherwise, let's leave that out for today. Joanna, to you, please.
Okay, so I'm confused about a couple of different things. One of which is I think I'm going to agree with Jill and say that I do see this as two separate issues, right? The issues with the medallions and the rental cars and the issues with Truro, right? And one of the things I don't understand with the existing rental cars and medallions is, did you just say they were allowed to trade medallions amongst themselves, and that we were unable to know for sure if they paid money between themselves to get the medallions? So that's like a regulation issue around it's like trading monopoly properties, right? And so that seems like something that absolutely needs to get addressed, because we've lost control of who has what medallions based on the fact that they're allowed to trade them with each other, right? Is that true?
I will say, if I can comment, that the select board per this bylaw has to approve a transfer, but in nowhere does it require, like, again, liquor licenses where we do see the transfer paperwork, we aren't required to see that. I think we've tried to change this a little so that it's more of a similar process, but now we had a recent transfer again. I tried to get that information, but was not told it, and they wouldn't get that up. But yeah, they pay between each other. They transfer, they have the transferability per this bylaw between agencies, or if someone wanted to start an agency, they can purchase medallions from an existing one and then get a license from us, kind of thing. But yeah, we do not have that financial information.
Well, so that seems to me to not be a level playing field, right? In terms of whether you're a Hertz or something like a commercial rent-a-car company, and whether or not you're renting your car on Truro. So I think we're talking about two different things just based on that. I think the second thing is that, yeah, if we're talking about Truro, right? Here's the other thing that I don't understand about the bylaw. So if you're saying that it can be one car per person, does that mean it's one car per person in a household? So if I'm two people in a household, the two people get a car? And then if they're garaged there, are we having a zoning problem, right? Because then it starts to be like, are we talking about short-term rentals? Except we're talking about cars.
Yeah.
Right? And are they allowed in different zones? And are we going to make a rule about that? And are we going to say, okay, if there's 4 adults in a household, you can have 4 Turo cars, but the adults have to be over 18? Like, this seems to make, and then I'm going to go to the other thing that Jill said that I thought was relevant is, could you require, if we're going to let Turo cars be on Nantucket, could you require them to pay excise tax here? And then we just shut down any cars being shipped in per se, and then we put a cap on the household, and we say, you know, because then we've got to try to avoid a zoning thing, right? Because nobody's going to want to look at 6 cars.
Yeah, no, if I may again respond, we went into this deep, and I think we did bring up the zoning issue because it's a business and no one wanted to kind of make this a zoning issue. So I think that's where this discussion of 1 kind of got taken away, because we did have the discussion at first, they wanted to limit it to 1. And the 1 was 1 per Nantucket address. So I think that's why they evened it out and did just a straight on definition. From my understanding last time of this discussion, because it started to get too complicated. As we know, we have multiple families at same addresses, and it becomes a whole thing. So I think that's why they went with just a straight up definition and the ability to discuss this and create a process outside of the bylaw itself, but making sure the bylaw itself, the definition covers all rentals, and that was the goal. But yeah, all of what you said was in the discussion, I promise.
It was in the discussion, but just point of clarification, it's not in this bylaw. There's no allowance for 1 per person or anything like that. There's
no
limit of the number of medallions. We're talking about increasing the number of medallions and maybe clawing back some that have previously been issued under certain circumstances, but there's no allowance for 1 per person or anything outside of the medallion system.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Joe, to you.
We had this discussion last year. I think it was last year. And to me, we have not made any progress. We don't have information. This is wishy-washy stuff. And I think we've got an enforcement issue that the chief talked about. I think the excise tax, if we could say no medallion without Nantucket excise tax, I think we should. I think we have to have some sense, a better sense of which medallions are used and which aren't. It doesn't appear to me like we really have that buttoned down. My sense is that this is a Band-Aid for a problem that is bigger than, and that there are too many unknowns, and that for us to make an intelligent decision. And there are some things that we got in the legalese from lawyers, one that arrived at 359, which I haven't even looked at. Another one that talks about whether or not you can take a medallion away. This is an unbaked cookie, and I don't feel comfortable taking a position on this item.
We're going to get.
I think the idea of putting it in 2 buckets is a good one, and there should be something that deals with the peer-to-peer, and there's something that deals with our existing supply of medallions, and they should be separate. I don't think they should be lumped together, but that's. So my recommendation would be that we take no action, which I think is what we did last year.
All right, thank you. Peter, is this something new? I'd like to open it up to some other people here shortly. You're muted.
Sorry, you can ignore me.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to ignore you, but thank you.
I'm voluntarily.
And I do intend to open it up. Stephen Cohen, I see your hand's been up for a while, and I'll go to you in just a second. But before we do that, I want to address the issue that I know is going to come up when we do hear from attorneys and others about this. What about the issue of taking these medallions, which had previously been seen as irrevocable. So now, you know, an argument's been put forward by an attorney representing at least one of the rental car companies. What is the town's position on that? Are these property for which damages might be owed if they were to be reclaimed by the town? Or are we viewing this some other way?
I can, as best I can, and I certainly respect other attorneys' opinions on this, and it, you know, it may be gray because there's arguments on both sides. Notwithstanding the fact that the bylaw does talk about it being an unexpiring thing, non-expiring right to lease or to rent a motor vehicle. I mean, I guess I'd just say I'm not convinced that if the town was taken to court on this, that not only would it lose, but it would have to compensate whoever had this medallion before. And again, I think there are analogies to be made with things like common victular or alcohol licenses, where similar sort of thing. You need the license, you spend a lot of money to get your business going. And if the town takes it away, well, hopefully they had a really good reason to do that. But the town doesn't owe you money just because that happens.
Okay, and under the proposed amendments to this bylaw, what are the conditions under which a medallion might be recovered or revoked by the town? Is it just the non-use of the medallion?
I believe in I don't think there's anything other than in section 58-3D or proposed D, which really is aimed at finding out if people are sitting on these medallions year after year and not using them, that the select board would get the authority to take those back. It doesn't go into any other reason, you know, misdeeds or something. I wouldn't even want to speculate.
Gotcha. So if a holder of a medallion today were to continue to use the medallion, they wouldn't be in any jeopardy of losing the medallion. Not at least under the proposed amendments to this bylaw.
I mean, I think that's accurate. If someone has a license and they have 30 medallions and they come in the next year to renew their annual license, I don't see the select board saying, well, we're going to cut you down to 15 for no reason. I can't imagine a, you know, scenario where that would make sense.
Okay. Yeah, this section D, 58.3D, I think says that quite clearly, that if the town obtains information suggesting that a rental agency is holding one or more permits that are not in use, they may conduct a hearing, and after providing written notice, they may revoke it. So essentially, if you have the medallion and you're using it, this isn't a threat to what has been termed property by some attorneys.
I think that's what this amendment is aimed at, is getting back ones that not people, businesses are sitting on and not using. So they're not available to others who might want to use them. That's what, particularly that paragraph D, that's what that's aimed at.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Chris, I see your fist.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I can't get my electronic hand to raise, and appreciate you recognizing me, because I want to just follow up on your same line of questioning, because the one thing that would change, though, is it limits the transferability of those medallions as written, right? So that is the one thing where the property had certain characteristics previously, and I think some of the people bought these medallions for consideration. Now they can't transfer them for consideration. So I think, and I'm just tying that back to kind of some of the stuff we received today. And I guess I was confused by the liquor license analogy, because I think those typically are transferable for consideration, aren't they?
I'll answer that one first. So the alcohol statutes don't address whether you can or can't do that. Obviously, if you have a liquor license and somebody else you want to trade or transfer or sell to somebody else. The select board can approve the transfer. Whether or not there's a private deal involving money is outside the statute. That's what the ABCC says as well. I will say that even though one of the current paragraphs, which talks about medallions being transferable, that would still be retained. It's what's now being called section 58-3C, which starts off RVMs are transferable. And after that, it talks about basically surrendering licenses. I'm sorry, surrendering medallions that you're not using anymore back to the town. So they still could be transferred between two businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, quickly, please, and then I want to get to.
Quickly, I guess I'd be happier if the public hearing had been held and we had some concrete decision from the select board in this warrant. It hasn't been, it just says it may be held. They may make a decision. To me, that's not definite enough. And I'm also curious about these B2B or the individuals. Who's got the insurance? Do people have insurance or not? What happens if the car's in an accident? And finally, another 200 cars on the island is not something we need in July and August.
The hearing, Joe, that I think you're referring to in the bylaw is the hearing that would be held in the event that evidence is brought to the select board that a medallion has not been used. So that's not a hearing that would have taken place.
To me, that the select board could find out whether the hearing was, whether the medallion was used and make some decisions, and that they don't, that miraculously someone isn't going to come and present them with the information.
Well, I don't know if it'd be miraculous, but somebody would say, hey, this guy's not using his medallions. And then Amy would come and say, I've got the receipts here. They were approved for, or they hold 25 medallions. I only have 22 registrations.
We had this discussion last year, and we don't know any more now than we knew last year.
Well, we didn't put these requirements into place, but this sets up the framework by which now we can hold businesses accountable.
Maybe.
Okay. I'm going to go to Stephen Cohen now, please. Stephen, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Okay, hi, thank you. I think if the board has figured out anything, it is the same thing that the select board figured out. They have really no information on what the issues are here. The only reason why this came before the select board is that the auto companies complained that they had unfair competition because they're renting out cars at 5 times the price and with bad customer service, and they're losing business to people who are renting them at much lower costs with better customer service. That's where we are. The only complaint about peer-to-peer car rentals is by the auto rental companies. There have been no consumer complaints. The police department has not filed any complaints. I don't know why we're here. So as you have noted, there are two extremely different issues here. One of them is how the auto rental companies' licenses are going to be treated legally. I don't have any position on that, but I think you can see it's a confusing issue. And any assumption that there's going to be licenses available this spring for peer-to-peer car sharing to use is laughable, because these companies are either going to immediately register all their cars or sue in court and say, you changed the rules, and under the prior rules we were allowed to do that. There might be 100 medallions available, but the idea that the other medallions would be available anytime soon, I think is unlikely. And frankly, I can tell you there are 300 Turo users on Nantucket right now. Most of those only have one car, but some have 2 or 3. At the select board hearings, we had two users come forward and testify. One of them owns a local laundromat and does it on the side, and the other one is a hotel employee and does it on the side. Both of them live here year round. But one of them has kids in the school system, and for the most part, they are not large businesses. So let me tell you what I think you should do and why. I think that you should take peer-to-peer out of Chapter 58 because the auto rental companies and the peer-to-peer have nothing to do with each other. And I think you should adopt a regulation that says that the select board can issue regulations for peer-to-peer pending a study committee. And that would very simply let you move forward and get the information you need. Right now there's a lot of speculation, but there's no information. And Turo is happy to share that information. I don't know if I said it before, but I represent Turo and it's 300 users on Nantucket. The auto companies, there are 3 of them are large national companies and 2 of them are local companies, but they are committed to doing this. And every year they renew their licenses and it's their business. And it makes sense to regulate them the way auto companies are regulated. It does not make any sense to regulate peer-to-peer the way as an auto company, because most of them are small families that just do it on the side. They have a lot of them only register in May or June to do it for a month or 2, a couple of weeks. Their kids go into summer camp, so they got an extra car, or they're doing it as a side business so they can pay for braces or hockey or rent or the high cost of living on Nantucket. But they're not organized enough to register every January. And frankly, you don't necessarily want them taking up licenses, auto rental licenses every January, because they might not do it, or they might only do it for a couple of weeks. It doesn't make any sense to count them as the same. Auto rental companies are able to, under state law, be wholesale car businesses, and they could buy cars at wholesale. They don't have to pay sales tax, and they get huge economic advantages. Obviously, the families that do Turo have to buy their cars at retail prices, have to pay sales tax, and are treated totally different. There are 0, and I say this very clearly, 0 towns in the country that have regulated peer-to-peer car rental. Every regulation for peer-to-peer car rental is at the state level. Massachusetts has 2 different bills pending, and we expect that one of them will pass. Turo actually started in Massachusetts 12 years ago and is a great company, and we're proud of the way it enables people to have side income, essentially passive income, which is a great way for Nantucketers to be able to make more money without having to work 2nd and 3rd jobs, because most of the money is made out in the neighborhood, not running another shift, which is what both of the people said why they did it. So the town, I think, should actually wait for the state. But if you want to do something, you should say the peer-to-peer can be regulated by the select board pending a study committee. And that way it would be not regulated as an auto rental company, but the seed would be planted to go down the road and see how it goes. I think the town would be in a much better position if it knew how many people did peer-to-peer car rentals, and if it knew where those cars were, and if it knew how many vehicles each people had, and whether or not it was an appropriate number, given the neighborhood they live in, and maybe how many trips or how many weeks or how many months the car is used. There's a ton of information gathering that could easily be done that would help the town determine whether or not it really needs any regulations whatsoever. Because again, there are no complaints. There's no one saying Turo is a problem except for the auto company rentals. So I think that's what the town, what the select board and what the FinCom should do is keep all of the regulations regarding the auto rental companies, but take peer-to-peer out and say peer-to-peer is not regulated as an auto rental company, but the select board is authorized to regulate it separately pending a study committee. And that way, if the town decides that there's an issue that they want to regulate, they're authorized for that. But right now, I think you have a police department that doesn't have any staff assigned to this or any budget for it. And obviously there are significant legal issues that's basically unenforceable in most ways. And even if they were bringing enforcement actions, you know, they'd have to bring a case in court to enforce those. You know, that could easily get solved with some regulations if we need them, but we should only be regulating actual problems. So I think that's my recommendation to the board, to just take peer-to-peer out of Chapter 58, authorize the select board to issue regulations pending a study committee, and frankly adopt a better definition of peer-to-peer than the one that was just made up on the fly. If you look at my flyer, I have a slightly different definition that is more accurate. The other thing about Turo is that Turo has 145 agreements with airports across the country, and we'd be happy to enter into an agreement with the Nantucket Airport so that it wouldn't have any, it would pay fees and not have problems, and people who violate that would be dropped from Turo. That's the goal. And then also Turo has a good neighbor policy, and it can negotiate with the town and add in any rules or regulations that the town wants into its good neighbor policy. So if people weren't following the rules, Turo would drop them, and that's much better and less expensive for the town. You know, the town could assert that there was a violation of the good neighbor policy, and it wouldn't have to have then ongoing expenses through the police department and the town council and you know, the select board and everything, if Turo was doing some self-regulation. So that's my 2 cents on it, and I hope you'll make the adjustments that I recommended. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Committee members, I see you, but I'm going to go to Avery Topol, is it?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We got you.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name's Avery Topol, and I'm an attorney with the law firm Sheehan Finnick. We represent Nantucket Rent-A-Car and Affordable Rentals. And thank you very much for considering our letter and allowing me to speak tonight. I'll start by saying that we support Article 72. We support the language that says that peer-to-peer services have to comply with the rental regulations. You know, there's been an issue over the last few years with businesses and people renting without medallions, and ultimately that's unfair to the businesses that have been doing it right for decades. So we completely support that change. There are some changes in 72 that we don't feel particularly strongly about. Adding more medallions, making sure they're being used, you know, those things make sense. We think that those are fine. But there are some other changes that we don't think that are as necessary, and could justify kind of like a grandfathering system, maybe an amendment to the article that would grandfather existing medallion holders, you know, under the terms that they have been operating under for the last 30 years. Specifically, the concerns that we have, the biggest one maybe, are that the medallions are no longer, you know, indefinite. They expire after a year and they get reissued annually. So I guess the select board could, if it wanted to, decide not to renew a medallion. And, you know, some of the agencies and our clients have had these medallions for decades. They've counted on them, you know, they've used them as collateral for loans, and they've made business investments with the expectation that this is how the rental business is going to be for, you know, the indefinite future. So it's a big risk if they're not guaranteed anymore and can be taken away, you know, annually. The second concern we had was the change in the language about transferability. One, it seems like they have to be transferred only with select board approval. So there would be a loss in the free transferability. And that the language about not being transferred for consideration, I know that Brian mentioned that they could still be freely transferable. We're still a little, the language makes us a little uncomfortable. So again, it's that being able to buy and sell and move them around as an agency wishes is kind of an important aspect to this. You know, these kind of this goes into this idea that the medallions are property. And just to kind of distinguish the liquor licenses and the other government permits that Brian had mentioned earlier, you know, these exist in perpetuity, or at least they were not expiring. You know, other types of licenses and permits have to be renewed annually, or if you want to transfer a liquor license, you still have to get town approval to do that. Under the current medallion scheme, they're freely transferable. You don't need to get town approval. And so they're kind of like taxi cab medallions, which have been property in other cases. you can't, unfortunately, it's tough to just take property away after it's been given. So again, we support Article 72. We support including peer-to-peer services in the regime. And we think the best thing to do would be to grandfather the existing medallion holders so that they're protected, in all these changes. But thank you very much for allowing me to speak, and happy to take any questions.
Yep, I have a question. So you're suggesting grandfathering from all of these provisions. So you mean even the provision that these permits need, medallions, licenses need to be used annually?
Yes, I think that we don't have a problem with that provision as much. So I think that our position would be that grandfathering from the transferability and the annual renewal requirement. But other than that, I think that those are our bigger issues.
I don't understand.
Sorry?
That wasn't a question for you, I think. Jill, let's go to you, please.
Hi, thanks. Is there anybody that can explain to me how it works for the insurance? For example, I know that when I have somebody, like my niece lived with me for the summer, and so I went and took her driver's license into my insurance company so they knew she was a driver on the car.
Jill, are you asking about peer-to-peer?
Yes. Well, I mean, if you want to explain it for the car, I just need to. I mean, I know I have to fill a lot of forms when I rent out a car, so I know they've got a big, broader insurance package, but
All Turo cars are required to have insurance that covers this activity. But they don't provide that insurance. They just have a requirement for it.
just the car. But no one does know who's driving the car, right? I mean, granted, people's friends drive their cars all the time. I understand that, but
Well, the person who rents the car is known to both Turo and the owner of the car, but the insurance is more broad. It's not like adding your kid to your insurance.
okay, thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't agree with Mr. Cohen's characterization that peer-to-peer should be treated differently outside this process. Like Nantucket established a cap on the number of rental cars some time ago. These are rental cars. You can call it peer-to-peer, or it's not any different. It's someone renting a car. So you could see the motivation, and it's clearly in Turo's best interest for us to do nothing because they can continue operating freely, which they've been doing for however long now. So I don't agree with that point.
Mr. Chair, if I could very briefly respond.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm definitely not advocating that we continue to do nothing. I'm advocating that peer-to-peer is different than car rental and should be regulated separately. And I'm saying the first thing you should do is say peer-to-peer is not covered under Chapter 58, but that the select board is authorized to issue regulations and, pending a study committee. And that would allow the select board to issue essentially any regulation that it found appropriate. In terms of the 700 car cap being real, frankly, it's a fantasy. On one hand, there are 50, 75, 100,000 people who visit Nantucket at the High Point. Does anybody think that they're renting 550 cars that are made available since 150 of those licenses are not being used? I mean, obviously, anybody who wants a car in Nantucket is getting a car. 350 of them are going through Turo right now, which is good because those cars are here and they don't need to go back and forth in the boat. But a lot of people rent cars in Providence or on the Cape, or they bring over their own cars. So, it's not like we have less cars if you put a cap on Turo or car rentals. It's just a matter of whether they're coming out on the boat on a weekly basis or whether there are cars that are here already. So I would argue that Turo has no impact on the number of cars. It really just helps with boat rental numbers, ferry availability. Thank you.
I would just respond to that, if I could, Stephen. I wasn't commenting about the number of cars on the island. I was commenting on the number of cars that Nantucket has authorized being rentals on the island, regardless the number of cars that are being driven, where they come from otherwise from a seasonal community.
Yeah, and
But the point I made at select board, and I think this article is a step in the right direction. It may not be perfect. And the point that I made at select board a few weeks ago was, to me, Turo peer-to-peer, it's not something different. It's an agency that's in the business of renting cars, and they outsource the ownership of the asset, and they outsource the customer service. And if they're such a willing partner to partner with the town on this, then we should treat them as an agency and let them come and apply for medallions like the other agencies. If that's how they want to do it, then we can go down that path.
Turo owns no cars and rents no cars. That would be like saying Uber and Lyft need to come in and get taxi medallions. Uber and Lyft do not offer rides. Uber and Lyft offer you, a service to make arrangements for rides. What you're saying is just not factually accurate. I don't mean to suggest that, but it's true. It's just in the same way Uber and Lyft are not taxi companies. They are ride sharing arrangement companies. Turo doesn't rent any cars to anybody.
Well, that was how it came out for Uber and Lyft when they've gone through their regulatory phase, which Turo hasn't gone through yet. So we'll see how it comes out.
Yeah, and that's why I think you should authorize the select board to issue regulations that make sense for peer-to-peer car rentals, as opposed to trying to make them car rental companies that they're not. They should be regulated as to the business that they're actually in, which I am 100% suggesting is something you should do. Give the select board that authority.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the board? Other members of the public?
Yes, I'd like to chime in from the public, if that's possible.
I can't see who's talking. Is this Mac?
Yes, yeah, sorry, I'm can't have the video up right now, but can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been listening into the conversation, and it's a lot of questions, and I actually live on the island and rent out my car on Turo, so I figured I could chime in because a lot of people just seem to not know what's happening. So I'll just give you my brief story, like how it applies to me. It's very hard living on the island, as we all know. Work 3 jobs in the summer. When Turo came out about a couple years ago, I found out, I could rent out my car, and just help supplement that even more. I think the main point is you go on Turo, look at the average, just look at every user. I've done this because I care about, I care about seeing who's on there. Just look at every user and you'll see they're just very normal summer residents, like trying to get maybe 2 or 3 grand extra for the summer. Like it's a really useful tool. Yeah, I think it definitely has to be treated separately because it's not a car rental business. These people can't a year in advance jump on the line, apply for medallions, compete with these companies. It's the car rental companies. It's just impossible, and it's kind of a slap in the face for people who are trying to get by on an island that's very hard to live on. And so treating them as the same, it seems like a real shame. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mac. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion.
Motion not to adopt.
I second.
Right, we have a motion and a second for discussion. Okay, I have some comments. I think that, oh, Denise, nice job with your floating thumbs up. Were you trying to raise your hand? Okay, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was trying to raise my hand and I, hit the wrong button. Just, I'm fine with the motion. I do not think we need to, we could potentially put in a comment that said, the select board might want to, we don't have to direct the select board to study anything. They can make that decision on their own. And in this instance, I think we just, my preference would be we kept it clean with the motion. And if there was a overwhelming majority on the committee that felt we needed to add a comment, we could consider that. But I think I appreciate Mr. Cohen's suggestion. However, the select board are more than capable of figuring out what they want to study. So that was my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chris, with your
Yeah,
human hand,
so, I'm sorry, Steve?
with your human hand again, good for you.
Yeah, thank you. So just to be clear, if we don't adopt the current, if the town meeting were to vote not to adopt, the current bylaw exists, which makes Truro rentals illegal in this town, right?
Well, just to be clear, Truro is a town in Massachusetts, and they're not in the business of peer-to-peer anything, as far as I know.
I still think it's called pickerel ball, so don't get me started. Peer-to-peer rentals are legal going forward if this bylaw is not adopted. Is that correct?
Libby, you have your hand up. Is that to this point?
I would want town council to respond to that, but I think, again, it is very gray, and I do not think there is a yes or no answer to that.
I would second that. There is an argument that, well, if someone using Turo, are they renting their car out? Yes. Do they have a license under Chapter 58? No. Does that mean they're in violation? I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. But then I think we also have the practical side, which Chief Casper made very clear. There's just no way to enforce that, even if you wanted to right now. So that's, the board was trying to, walk that tightrope between, is this something we want to regulate? How can we regulate it? What would work? I think it is sort of gray right now.
But I mean, sorry, but I'm just following the existing 58.2 that says no person can lease without a sticker, without all these. I mean, that seems to not be very gray to me. That seems to be very black and white. But putting the enforcement issue aside for a moment.
Okay. I guess I would just, liken it to before the state stepped in, what was happening with Uber and Lyft. People were acting like taxis and making money, dropping people from one place to another without a license from the town. Then the state stepped in and did it that way. I think it's the same. I think it's the same. You could certainly argue that someone using Turo for their one car, they're doing it without a license and they're renting their car. So that seems to violate Chapter 58. It's just as a practical matter, it's there's no really good way to go after anybody for doing that, quote unquote.
Okay, Steve, I was just following up on your comments at the outset about sort of part of what we're looking for here is a path to give people a way to legally be involved, that want to be good actors, regardless of enforcement. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with going forward saying we're not going to codify this in the bylaw and we're not going to enforce it. Just feels shaky to me.
I don't, sitting here right now, nearly 7 o'clock here and 3 hours into this meeting, I don't know exactly how to craft it, but if I could, what I would like to see is the ability for Turo for Turo to continue to operate, but an infrastructure set up so that we could collect some real data about how many of these are out there. I do like parts of this article, particularly the clawback provisions for unused medallions. I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. And I think understanding exactly how many people, entrepreneurs, however you want to characterize them, want to use Turo, would be useful information for us to have. Otherwise, Joe will be back here a year from now saying the same thing he's saying tonight, which is that we don't have any more information than we had in 2024.
Steve, what's interesting is Turo's council said that they had 350 users on Nantucket.
No, we don't have any documentation.
Well, that's what I'm just saying what he said tonight.
Yeah.
He also said that people do 1 or 2, and I personally know people who do 6 and more.
Libby, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I was just gonna comment back on the section 58.2 and whether or not it's legal or illegal to have Turo here. Again, I think the gray area has to do with what is a business. If somebody has one Turo vehicle and they off and on rent it, are they a business? Or is that just this little side thing they do? And there is no definitive answer to that. Secondly, I wanted to mention that I have, as we are discussing here, mentioned some of this to a couple of select board members who have asked if it would be possible to hold off on a motion until one or more of them can be present.
Fantastic. I like that idea very much. Would somebody like to withdraw their motion? I'm asking as a favor, if you would withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw my motion if we're going to get a select person to.
Very good.
Stephen, can I just make a quick follow-up comment? I know we all want to get out of here, but just 58.2 starts by saying no person, business, or corporation. So the issue of whether what's a business or not is not left ambiguous.
But what's a person?
I think the ambiguity is whether they're renting or using a service, right?
Well, the person's renting, but okay.
With all this talk, I think we're saying this isn't ready for prime time.
And
I think we should just go
It's a
forward.
policy matter, in my opinion, and the policy makers want to be here to talk about it. And I think we should give them the opportunity to do that. So we'll put a pin in it, and when Denise is chair, she can take over this circus. All right, so we had a motion, it was seconded, it was rescinded. I don't know if that was in proper form. I would ask that everybody agree that it was. And now we have no motion, and I'm going to leave open the public hearing. Is this a public hearing? I think it's a public hearing. It's not a public hearing. We're not going to close a public hearing. If there's one open right now, it will be continued, and this will be posted on a future agenda.
Okay.
And let's see. Must we talk about Article 73, bicycle right-of-way, tonight? Is there somebody who's been waiting for 3 hours to talk about that? Denise, I see your hand up.
Jill was before me.
Jill, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, can we maybe call it for tonight if anyone's open to it? I'll keep going if you want to, but it's been 3 hours, and I hate to delay it though. I know I don't want to make your head explode, Denise.
Is there an emoji for that? Let me just check.
Oh, there are lots of exploding head emojis. I don't know if they have rockets.
Yeah, rockets.
Okay.
Yes,
But-
so Stephen, thank you. I agree that we can postpone 72, 73, and 74. Just so you know, some of these meetings in March, we might be on for 3-4+ hours. Because as you saw today, look how long this took. I don't think 73 and 74 are going to be zippy. And we've still got a lot of articles to go. So walking away now is fine by me. And you won't get the same option in the future, just so everybody understands that. Because I'm not going to pretend that we're going to get stuff done in 2 hours at our future meetings. We don't have many left. And on March 4th, which is our next meeting, We will be spending, I'm pretty sure, the entire meeting going through minutes from, the last year and a half that have been documented and now ready for our review. So over to you, Stephen.
Okay,
Hey,
well,
Stephen, do we need to approve the budget for the school board that presented?
no,
Okay,
That gets approved in Article 8, I think it is, for the general fund.
okay, well, Denise, with your wise advice that we will not have this option available to us in the future, I agree with Jill, and I would like to kick the can down the road for Articles 72, 73, and 74. And so that's what we're doing. And so moving on to committee reports, only to say that I'm not going to ask for committee reports, and that the date of our next meeting is Tuesday, March 4th. That is a hybrid meeting. I assume that means we're in one of the trailer rooms. They're right next to each other. You can find us for an A or B. Stay tuned. And seeing no other business, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Oh, second.
Thank you. Roll call. Denise,
Aye.
Jeremy,
aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Stephen, you and I.
and I for me. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
Good night.
Good night.
Hi, everybody.
Cheers.